How you doing, Dan, man? Yeah, Brennan is on Amber Sapphire. We're calling it Rapunzel, R-A-M-P-U-N-Z-E-L. And Nathan is on can you make a command for Deckless and link it to the Hello and welcome to live coverage of the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational. It's the big day. I'm Tandy. This is Bomat. What's up, Bomat?
Hi, Bomat. Wait a second.
Oh, I got him. I got him to start off the day. Busted him right up.
Yeah.
We are here and we are presenting you with $5,000 worth of cash that we're going to be giving away to 16 competitors. 12 of those players were invited and 4 earned their slots, and they're going to be playing 2 days worth of Lorcana to win their fair share of that $5,000 prize purse. Top prize, $2,000, and your name in the annals of history.
Right. This is we're coming up at the end of the first chapter here. This is for one thing going to prove what deck maybe sits at the top of the metagame. These players have done a lot of tuning to arrive at their decks for this event.
Yeah. So players today in the event are broken up into two pods of 8. The players are playing in pods today. We're going to play 3 different pods, and as they win or lose in the first pod, that'll determine where they go later on. Uh, Basically, if you get 3 wins, you're on to day 2. You're in the top 8. You're playing for real cash money. If you get 3 losses before you get 3 wins, Dunzo, out of the tournament. The players who start off 3-0 in the first pod will have higher seed tomorrow for play draw. And then the players, based on their record today overall, that'll determine seeding for tomorrow. It's going to be a great tournament. We have a long list of players that we will talk about all throughout the day, including the former world champion of Magic the Gathering, Nathan Stoyer, who we're going to be watching in the first round. Let's get Nathan's player slide up on the camera. I'd love to talk about Nathan a little bit because his accolades in Magic the Gathering are quite deep, and world champion from 2022, just competed in Worlds, didn't have the best showing, didn't, come back and defend the title, but, he's a Pro Tour champion, 3 back-to-back Magic Online Championship appearances, and his favorite movie is Coco from Disney, so that's good.
Yeah, no Coco cards in Lorcana yet, but I bet he'll be excited for that. Nathan's been a super impressive Magic player just in these last few years as he's broken into the top levels of professional play, and now he's excited to try his hand at Lorcana.
Yeah, and his opponent is no slouch either. That's going to be Brennan DeCandio, longtime killer on the SCG Tour. He's a new proud father, 3-time SCG Tour champion, and good friends with my good friend Ross Miriam. And him,
Right.
Ross, and Tana Grace used to team with each other all the time. And I'm glad to see him playing Lorcana. His favorite Disney movie is going to be the 1992 Aladdin. That's probably my favorite Disney movie too. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to beat.
All right. Well, these players have been waiting for quite some time, and I believe it's about time to start round number 1 of the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational, brought to you by TCGplayer.com. Let's head on down to the feature match area for round number 1. On your left, former world champion Nathan Stoyer playing Ruby Amethyst Control. On his right, Brennan DeCandio playing Rapunzel. This is a Sapphire Amber deck, and we're underway.
Yeah, so Brennan for this event tested with 2 other competitors, Mason Clark and Harlan Fear. Brennan was actually one of the kind of the primary playtester in the trenches on Pixelborn, getting as many as 30 matches a day, according to his teammates.
Wow. Okay, so Nathan Stoyer has a very interesting start here. Turn on Archimedes. This is an open decklist event. I want to make that very clear, so players know what each other are playing. And Nathan knows that the Rapunzel deck doesn't have a whole lot of early drops that actually can challenge the ones. They're more geared towards beating the late game of the Ruby Amethyst deck. And Nathan, perhaps sensing a little bit of weakness in the deck list, and plays the Archimedes to steal a couple of free lore points early on.
Right, and we do see one of the few 1-drops at Brennan's disposal in his hand in Stitch New Dog, but a lot of the time in a matchup like Ruby Amethyst, you kind of want to be preserving those for ink. You don't expect to need to contest the board early.
All right, Archimedes is going to keep questing. We did have 1 jump ahead, so Brennan able to play a 4-drop next turn, and Nathan leads with a Maleficent Sorceress to draw a card. Maleficent Sorceress, a great 3-drop from Amethyst, often the focal point for these Ruby Amethyst decks, not only because it replaces itself, but also because it can sing Friends on the Other Side.
Yeah, a lot of Nathan's successes in Magic have been with red and black kind of grindy mid-range based decks, so it's really not surprising that he ended up on Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah, right in his wheelhouse for sure. All right, so we have Mickey Mouse Detective, and instead of playing the Stitch New Dog, Brendan DeCanio decides to juke and just play Mickey Mouse and hold that Stitch for potential ink later on. We have Friends on the Other Side being sung off the Maleficent, another Sorceress being played, flush with cards as Nathan Stoyer, and because of that, you saw DeCandio actually ink that powerful 4-mana card, You Have Forgotten Me, usually one of the better cards in this control matchup.
Yeah, and I think Brennan might have a second one in hand, which is where the first starts getting to be trouble. But no, actually no, decides there's not actually going to be time in this game, and I think that's a great call, especially with the way Nathan's been playing these early turns.
All right, DeCandio going to quest for 1. Now, Nathan Sawyer is ahead, but he only has 3 lore. These characters don't quest for very much, and we're going to go rampant. Mickey Mouse Detective, that's the 3rd one of the game, and now we're already up to 8 ink, potentially 9 next turn. We can start playing a lot of big stuff, including that Stitch Carefree Surfer that Brennan's got poking out.
Yeah, Nathan has a lot of board presence early, but as soon as Brennan starts dropping the larger characters in this Amber Sapphire list, they're just going to start making quick work of Nathan's characters, and he's not actually going to be able to get enough lore to really take advantage of them, I don't expect.
Well, we'll see. His plan is much different than what I've seen Ruby Amethyst pilots do. And because of that, I'm just interested to see how the rest of this game plays out. Because normally the Ruby Amethyst deck uses the Archimedes simply as defensive measures against opposing 1-drops, like Stitch New Dog or Lilo Making a Wish. But here he's being very aggressive. And because of the Friends on the Other Side and the Maleficent Sorceresses, he's been able to essentially keep pace with resources in hand while deploying those early threats.
All right, and this is definitely something players will recognize from Nathan's time in Magic is being able to find these unconventional play patterns maybe for his list, but deciding that they're right for this game in particular.
All right, so Maui comes down. That's going to eat one of the Mickeys, and then we're going to quest for 4. Nathan, I believe, is up to 7. We'll get the spotter updating the lore totals in just a second. And here we go. Here's Carefree Surfer. Carefree Surfer is going to draw 2 cards thanks to having 2 Mickeys in play. And now it's up to Brendan Candio if he wants to maybe double challenge into one of these Archimedes or the Sorceress, or if he just wants to quest and race.
And definitely interesting to see Rapunzel being inked for Brennan here, especially knowing we're going to have, it should be 2 damage on each of these Mickeys. Probably just has a stacked hand and figures he's going to be able to get card advantage another way, maybe even with a second Rapunzel.
Alright, well, both the Mickeys trade off. The damage was wrong on them, but they're right now. Ink totals are not correct. We'll get confirmation from our spotter here in just a second, but I'm pretty sure Nathan is much higher.
We see Dragonfire trade off for this Stitch Carefree Surfer.
Okay, so 8-1 in favor of Nathan and a large board advantage. The Dragonfire taking out the Carefree Surfer means that his leverage against these opposing characters is pretty light. We'll see if he can deploy something big here, potentially get back in this game. You're seeing that early creature rush strategy from Nathan Stoyer. Not normally something you see out of Ruby Amethyst. This is a really unique approach to the matchup.
Exactly. This is something Nathan seems to have recognized, that you do have the tools at your disposal to maybe be able to defend an early start like this. We saw the backup in Dragonfire, in Maui, and eventually Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. If Brennan is playing 1, maybe 2 large characters a turn, Nathan's going to be able to keep pace with those and maybe cross the finish line just with these early turn characters.
All right, Brennan in the tank here has a beer.
Brennan's really thinking through his turn and deciding whether there's going to be 2 ink left over at the end, and if so, he's going to want to start out with this Be Our Guest.
Yeah, I see a Hades, Lord of the Underworld in hand, I think, and that card is quite strong in the matchup, being able to rebuy Carefree Surfer.
Taking a look at the top here, I see a Maleficent Uninvited at least, and maybe a Hades Infernal Schemer. We take the Hades Lord of the Underworld.
Infinite Hades. Can't kill that guy.
That's true.
Yeah, he just goes home when you kill him.
Yeah.
All right. Here's Hades about to come down. We'll see if he gets back.
Maybe both Hades coming down here. And this is, a pretty good way to combat with what Stoyer's putting down. These characters eventually probably just going to trade off for the Maui and the other Archimedes that Nathan has. But, getting this value is exactly what Brennan's looking for.
All right, going back to Nathan's turn. We're going to see if we want to do some questing My guess is yes, because we're just trading for those Hades next turn. And Nathan, understands that he can maybe lose the long game in this matchup thanks to Carefree Surfer and Hades Chains. And so getting aggressive with those Archimedes, could end up paying off. He's already at 9 lore. Normally, by this point in the game, the Ruby Amethyst deck has none. 0.
That's true.
Up to 11, putting a lot of pressure on Brennan. Here is the Queen. Let's get the Queen on screen. This is one we didn't see too much in our last chance qualifier yesterday, but a really strong 5-drop from the Amethyst color and can exert each turn to draw a card. It's pretty nice. The 4/5 body also quite large. DeCandio has the Carefree Surfer again that he found off of the Stitch Rockstar. But there it is, the Wicked and Vain, the Queen. That 4/5 is. I thought it was going to be integral to all of the Ruby Amethyst control decks because drawing cards just seems great. You don't see it a ton anymore, though. I mean, it's usually like a 2 or 3 of, but a big emphasis on the finishers that cost 7 and 8, and the interaction
Right.
like Maui.
And you mentioned not seeing much of the Queen yesterday. We also didn't see much of the Mirror yesterday because our two most prominent Ruby Amethyst players were playing none of those in either of their lists.
Opting for Ursula's Cauldron instead.
Right. Matthew Campo won that LCQ and is playing today with Ruby Amethyst with no repeatable card draw.
All right, Hades doesn't trade for the Archimedes. Interesting considering Brennan is a little bit on the back foot, but perhaps no longer afraid of getting beaten with early lore generation. Wants to save that Hades to trade up for maybe the Maui or into the Queen.
That's right. And with we've seen a rise in Stitch Carefree Surfer over the past few weeks, such that it's kind of an integral part of Brennan's deck. And one thing that comes with that is wanting to keep your characters around a little longer because every extra character just makes it that much easier to get value off of Stitch Carefree Surfer. And that's one of the reasons why Brennan and his team decided to play 4 copies of Grand Metalla in each of their lists.
Yeah, it also is pretty great at singing Be Our Guest and One Jump Ahead.
Right.
And if your opponent ever decides to challenge it, well, guess what? It's going to the Inkwell. That's nice.
Exactly. That just makes it that much more likely that Grandma sticks around to get you the second character for Carefree Surfer.
All right, we're going to ink a Maui. Interesting, but we're going to use it to play a Heroic Outlaw. This 7-drop Aladdin is one of the best cards in Ruby and a Stone Cold Killer against the aggressive decks. It's 7 costs 5/5 quest for 2, and whenever it banishes an opposing character in a challenge, you steal 2 lore from them. So it's kind of like gaining life if you're a Magic player. You get to knock something off, gain a little bit, and take a little bit.
Right, and definitely one of the more threatening characters Ruby Amethyst can play, but we see Amber Sapphire, as opposed to Amber Steel, has an easier time dealing with Heroic Outlaw, playing 4 copies each of Let It Go and Hades Infernal Schemer. We'll see if Brennan has access to either of those right now.
I just saw Infernal Schemer hiding out in hand. Curious to see. So Nathan didn't quest, didn't draw a card with the Queen. Essentially saying, I don't want to open up any of my characters to getting challenged by that big Carefree Surfer. I'm ahead on lore. I can wait a little while. We can force you to make the first action, but DeCandio does have ways to interact with ready characters thanks to those removal spells. So this might bite Nathan a little bit. We'll see if DeCandio has any punishes.
Yeah, in order to kind of win in one fell swoop, which is what this play pattern might suggest Nathan is trying to do, he would have to get up to 9 lore in play, which is a little unattainable. You can do that over a couple turns, but Brennan's just going to be able to build up enough of a board that any exerted character is going to be finding its way to the discard pretty quickly.
All right, we have the Hades going to put the Aladdin in the Inkwell, and then we're going to play another Grammatella, and then we're going to sing one jump ahead with the Grammatella that's in play. Down to 1 card is Brennan DeCandio, but an enormous Inkwell, and those bells, strange but special, are threatening a lot of lore if he's able to find some in the next few turns, since he does have that 10 ink threshold.
And just as an aside, we see Brennan with a good habit here. When he puts down his hand at the end of the turn, he puts a die on top, both to show his opponent exactly how many he has in hand, and just to keep that card separate from his Inkwell.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Thank you so much to Brennan for doing that for us. Helps us keep track of things on coverage as well. We have to challenge because of
Reckless.
Reckless, and Grammatella goes to the Inkwell. Now we're going to go back Brennan's way. That brave little Taylor, though, this 8 cost Ruby card quests for quite a bit of lore. It's large and evasive. One of the more iconic cards from the first set, and quests naturally for the most lore in the game so far at 4.
And boom, Brennan with the best possible here, Rapunzel. You're low on cards. You've got a ton of damage on your Stitch Carefree Surfer. How about we draw 3 and remove 3?
Yeah, and I actually think Brennan actually walked the dog there with using the Grammatala to sing, and that forced the Reckless Maui to attack. Normally, Nathan's trying to essentially not allow Rapunzel to gain any cards, but the forced attack on the Reckless and the useless Grammatala body going to the Inkwell means that we can initiate that attack and the Rapunzel refresh to draw a bunch and punish Nathan.
Yeah, great play. And we're going to get busy.
Yeah, starting to quest. It seems like Nathan doesn't want to, so we might as well quest ourselves and start chewing them up. Here's brave little Taylor and Queen. They're probably going to enter into the combat zone to challenge some of these characters on Brennan's side. But we may just want to quest with brave little Taylor. Scott evasive. All right, that's 4. Here's 4, 5, 6, up to 17. Brendan DeCanio going to need an answer for the brave little Taylor next turn, or else he's going to be in some trouble. He did draw some cards with the Infernal Schemer, but here's another big baddie. Elsa, Spirit of Winter. This 8 cost Amethyst card going to come down, freeze 2 opposing characters, and make it so that they cannot do anything next turn, and it exposes them to being vulnerable to challenges potentially, but I feel like we're just using that to protect our own stuff from being challenged.
Yeah, and before that Rapunzel, the brave little Taylor looked great here, right? Brennan only had 1 card in hand plus the 1 off the draw step. But after that Rapunzel Carefree Surfer turn, Brennan has had a lot more looks at a removal spell to take care of the evasive brave little Taylor.
Yep. I'm looking at a hand from Brendan DeCandio, and I don't see a way to deal with the brave little Taylor right off the top of my head. We can send the Hades into the Queen, but it doesn't quite kill it. And then getting it back doesn't do anything. So I think Brennan might be knocked out here. We'll see if he's got something up his sleeve. He does have a Carefree Surfer to draw some cards, and that can find a Let It Go, which we can sing or maybe play because we do have a ton of ink. Here it is. We're going to draw 2 and see if we can find the answer to the brave little Taylor. Top 2. Let's see, be our guest. We can sing that. Look again. That is Hades, I think. Yes, Infernal Schemer.
And even if Brennan hadn't found the Hades just off that Surfer, the Be Our Guest, you can sing that for free, and then once Brennan plays an ink, he'll have enough to play a Hades here, thanks to this, kind of ridiculous ink generation in the early game with multiple Mickey Mouse detectives.
Yeah, I think he needs to deal with the Elsa and the brave little Taylor, and I don't think that that's possible because the evasive means no challenge, and the ready means no challenge, so it has to be directly removing both. And I think he just has the Hades and no Let It Go.
I wonder if the line would have to be, do you have enough to sing Be Our Guest, play maybe a Rapunzel to draw 3, and then hit multiple Let It Go to sing?
Well, that seems like that's the move that Brennan's going to go for. We're going to sing. We're going to reveal Let It Go as a joke, and then we're going to put one of these characters into our hand. And I think Brennan is getting close to being gone for game number 1. He's fighting the world champion, or sorry, the former world champion of Magic the Gathering, Nathan Stoyer. This is round number 1, the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational here at Apex Gaming, brought to you by TCGplayer.com.
Believe Brennan's only out at this point after playing the Carefree Surfer will be 2 copies of Let It Go right off the top. But if he does find those, he can sing them. I think, unless that Carefree Surfer entered.
The Hades can challenge, but the Carefree Surfer can't, and the Hades can sing.
More importantly, sing the. Even if we do find 2 copies of Let It Go, and Brennan does pack it in.
Yeah, and that's game number 1 in Nathan Stoyer, that early lore generation from the Goons, Archimedes. able to put him in a spot where the Elsa and the Brave Little Tailor are lethal, way ahead of schedule, and Brendan DeCandio didn't quite have enough time to catch back up. As these players are shuffling up here for game number 2, I'd love to take a moment and shout out our sponsors for our event. The Lorcana Invitational is brought to you by Cards and Castles 2. This Tactics card battler on Steam is free to play. If you use code Apex Gaming, you can get 5 free booster packs, and I quite enjoyed it. I played it a good bit after meeting with our sponsor and learning the game myself. We did make some tutorial videos, which we will be showing between rounds, so you can get a better idea of how to play the game before you invest yourself in it. But highly recommend. It's a very fun game. Also, thank you so much to Ultimate Guard. They are the premier TCG supply store. They sell awesome items like the Katana sleeves and the Archive deck box. If you have a lot of commander decks or a cube, the Archive deck box is perfect for you. It's enormous and it keeps your cards safe from rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if it does against
Not yeah.
the hail. The hail is pretty damaging, I think. But
Depends on
also,
the hail.
thank you so much to our flagship sponsor, TCGplayer.com. They're your one-stop shop for all things TCG related. You can find awesome articles on their TCG Player Infinite side of things. We actually posted up a couple articles this week along with them to showcase the players in the event, their deck lists, as well as the Lorcana Chapter 1 metagame. We also have TCG Player to thank for being the marketplace for all TCG sales in the ecosystem right now. You know, that place is where almost every local game store goes to sell singles. And you can check out tcgplayer.com and find the lowest price for anything you need, from Pokemon to Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, and now Disney's Lorcana. This is an open decklist event, and you see Nathan is on his phone looking at his opponent's deck list. We are in the future. We're in the future.
Absolutely. No more handing your opponent a crumpled up paper deck list that's been through hell over the weekend. And we saw that slightly unconventional strategy from Nathan in game 1, starting off with those early characters. I wonder if he's decided that's his plan in this matchup. There's 3 players on this Amber Sapphire deck, and if Nathan has already found a way to kind of manipulate the game into a place he thinks is preferable to him, he might be able to make short work of them. We see here Brennan's Amber Sapphire Rapunzel list that he, Harlan, and Mason are playing. Only 2 copies of Stitch Rockstar and 4 Carefree Surfers. These players decided Carefree Surfer was what the game was about, and they decided to maximize that card. That's why we see the Grammatallas, the Mickey Mouses, and the 1 jump ahead to get Carefree Surfer down early, draw some cards, and take control of the game with that enormous body.
Yeah, all these ramp effects, the 1 jump ahead, the Mickey Mouse, these are just ways to enable the 6 and 7 drops. The Hades, Infernal Schemer, and Stitch Carefree Surfer are nice payoffs for the ramp effects. The Stitch gives you refresh on resources against the control decks, and the Hades lets you interact with your opponent when they play a bunch of characters. Now, normally the Ruby Amethyst deck, not very aggressive, but Nathan Stoyer went really low to the ground last game. We'll see if he wants to do the same this game, if that's maybe his strategy after playtesting this matchup some after decklist went public. But those pair of Archimedes last game did a lot of lore damage to Brennan over the course of that game.
Resolving mulligans here, we saw Brennan mulligan 1 card, Nathan mulligan 2. These players both, a little cautious not to overdo it. You can get into dangerous situations if you draw too many uninkable cards. And we see at the top of Brennan's hand there was Mr. Smee.
You like that one?
Yeah, I'm a fan of Mr. Smee. 3 ink, 2/5, 1 lore. That's it. But willpower like that is exactly what you want in a Rapunzel deck.
Yeah, Mr. Smee, he's Captain Hook's right-hand man.
Kind, gentle soul.
And whenever I watched the movie Hook as a child with Robin Williams, the actor who played Smee was the same one from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he became one of my favorite characters in Hook because he did such a great job of being the goofball that runs around without knowing really what to do. All right, we're underway here for game number 2. Brendan DeCandio down a game, but he's going to start off with a new dog. We're going to quest for 1. That's going to get him up to 1. Nathan Stoyer, no play on turn 1 to challenge, so not digging hard for the Archimedes and didn't draw them this game. No 2-drop from Brennan. Interesting. That means no 1 jump ahead. No Grammatala. Here's a Gaston from Nathan to challenge next turn.
This is a situation you probably like to find yourself in if you're Brennan. You know, Gaston has Reckless, meaning if Brennan wants to, he can set up a trade, his 1-drop for Nathan's 2-drop, or he can just decide to sit on the Stitch and just not give the Gaston any opportunities.
All right, we do have an update from one of our off-camera matches in the Invitational. We do have 16 competitors battling it out here. Don Delozier wins round number 1 against my good friend and co-host of the Lost Boys podcast, Harlan Fear. Unfortunate for him, but he's also playing that Sapphire Amber deck that we see Brennan DeCandio playing. They're playing the same list as they tested together. We'll see if Brennan's able to come back from being down a game and make it 1-1 against Nathan Story, or if he's going to fall into the losers bracket with his buddy.
Yeah, things are going well here for Brennan. Got Mickey Mouse on turn 3, which is kind of perfect. That's if you're mulliganing for anything in a Mickey Mouse deck, it's Mickey Mouse. You know, you've built your deck in such a way that you can make use of that extra ink, and Brennan is now trying to figure out how best to do that.
Well, he's got the ability to quest and play Maximus, which will force Gaston to challenge it, and the Sorceress will probably double trade into it to just clear it. Now, whether or not Brennan wants to offer that trade is another story. I think the problem is that the way that challenging and questing works and stuff, Brennan can try to set up so that the Reckless Gaston has to attack into New Dog, but Nathan can clear it with the Sorceress instead, and then no harm, no foul, and we're just back to square one, trading the Maximus for the 2 opposing characters. So.
Yeah, we saw Brennan did have the best opportunity for that was on the previous turn before the Maleficent came down. The fact that Brennan didn't quest with Stitch once Gaston was in play indicates that he's maybe prioritizing having a shift target for this Rockstar that is in his hand.
Brennan decides to ink a Rapunzel. I think that's going to be very common for Amber against Ruby Amethyst. Ruby Amethyst is great at clearing characters completely and doesn't often leave damage on things. So Rapunzel going into the inkwell as a result. Here is the Maximus, and it is exerted. Nathan Stoyer, let's see what you got. He can double trade into the Maximus, but the new dog is safe. Here is another Maleficent Sorceress going to draw a card, and we'll see what he wants to put into the inkwell. Maybe he can sing a Friends on the Other Side. Maximus, Palace Horse. What's Maximus from? Rapunzel?
Yes.
Tangled.
Tangled.
Wow.
Look.
Well, it is Rapunzel.
It's Rapunzel. Yeah, okay.
But Rapunzel is
right. I wasn't wrong.
Rapunzel is the character from Tangled.
Yes. Anyway, Maximus down, and I think that was a great turn to play Maximus for Brennan. You're still 1 turn off of Nathan being able to answer it with a Dragonfire or a Maui, so that was the last opportunity Brennan had to get a 2-for-1 against this Gaston before the bigger removal starts making way for the Reckless.
All right, so Brennan has Rockstar, so he can shift that. Quest, maybe sing, but he also has another new dog he can play and cycle to draw cards, so could be the sequence here. That'll put a lot of pressure on Nathan to have the answer of Dragonfire or the Maui, depending on what Brennan wants to do with the Rockstar. We're still early in the game, only at 2 lore for Brennan, so not a lot of pressure from him yet. So Nathan has plenty of time to find those powerful interactive pieces. And looks like we're just going to hard cast the Rockstar and Quest for 1. I like this play.
Yeah, I like this because Brennan has access to a Carefree Surfer for next turn, so he's really prioritizing putting himself in the best position to leave 2 characters in play before turn 7. So Rockstar is just going to come down as an individual threat. You don't need to shift it. That Brennan doesn't want to open himself up to an easy 2-for-1.
All right, we're going to spend 5 killing the Stitch Rockstar, so clears it before it's able to do any serious damage. We're going to ink Grammatala and play the Carefree Surfer and draw 2. And my guess, we're going to start questing with the Mickey Mouse and maybe the new dog as well, but perhaps wants to protect it from Maui, but now just going to go ahead and quest, and we have bigger fish to fry, right? Just going to go ahead and turn those characters into lore.
Right, and I don't know Brennan's hand, but at this point in the game, if Maui starts coming down, that gives you that challenge target to get damage on your characters for Rapunzel, as we saw last game. So Brennan is completely fine with exposing these cheaper, smaller characters to Maui if it's gonna put him in a position to take advantage of Rapunzel's.
All right, let's see what he wants to do. Ink number 6 is Mickey Mouse, Wayward Sorcerer. We are going to play a Dragonfire on the Carefree Surfer just to clear it. And now we're going to trade with the new dog. We're going to go back to Candio's way. Board mostly clear. Carefree Surfer at the top here wouldn't do a lot because there's only one character in play. But we'll see what Brennan wants to do. We have a Be Our Guest. We can maybe sing that with the Mickey Mouse Detective. We have the 5-cost Maleficent. And that can quest for 3. It's quite large. But doesn't rumble in combat that well against things like Maui. But what does, right?
True. And got a glimpse of Nathan's hand. He does have access to a Be Prepared, but chose to take this turn to, trade off, spend removal spells and characters to 1-for-1 Brennan's cards. Likely trying to set Brennan up to, get back onto the board in preparation for Nathan to punish that with a Be Prepared.
All right, quest up to 6, and Maleficent is the play. A quest for 3. It's dangerous. We'll see if Nathan can clear it. I see an Archimedes peeking out to Maui. Maui can come down and smash that Mickey Mouse. I feel like that's a pretty good play unless there's a 7 hiding out that he'd rather get down. Okay.
Yeah, this is you're at the point in the game now from Brennan's position where you have to be pretty careful about how quickly you develop your threats, right? Because if you overdevelop, you get punished by Be Prepared. If you underdevelop, there's plenty of removal spells in Ruby Amethyst, like Dragonfire and Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. So this is, a tight spot to navigate that you get into around turn 7, 8, 9 against Ruby Amethyst.
All right, Nathan, what you got, buddy? Maui seems like a pretty easy play, but I don't know if it's the right one. His hand is not quite clear to me. Keeping it close to the vest.
And the nice thing about Maui is, 6 is a lot, but it's still only 6 willpower on this Maleficent, meaning Nathan is no longer opening himself up to getting Rapunzeled.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nathan's wearing a jacket from the Magic Online Championship showcase. That's actually where I first became familiar with him. Took down both sides of the bracket in his first Mox appearance to become the champion.
Was that when he was playing Is It Phoenix?
I don't remember. I feel that one may have been modern.
Okay. Nathan was a big innovator for Is It Phoenix and Pioneer a couple years back. I remember seeing his deck list and being impressed with how consistently he was able to update it for the metagame. If I'm not mistaken, he was one of the first people to play Temporal Trespass in the deck as well. But we have a lot of stuff going on here. Hades puts the Maui into the inkwell. We're questing for 3, and now Nathan Sawyer are going to need an answer. Board's looking pretty scary now.
And this is not as great of a feeling for Brennan. You do protect your Maleficent and start questing for 3, which is great, but you don't love to give your opponent extra ink when they've just developed this magic mirror. If Nathan can weather these next couple turns, he's going to be in prime position to, really start accumulating card advantage and be able to dole out answers as needed.
All right, here is a Spirit of Winter. This Elsa 8-drop from Amethyst is going to freeze these 2 opposing characters. It exerts them and they don't ready at the beginning of the next turn. And that's going to allow them to be challenged by something next turn like the Elsa or potential Maui or other rush character off the top. Currently, though, unable to challenge either character effectively. They each have 6 willpower, which means that the 4 strength on the Elsa, not quite enough to do it. Brenda Candio, thumbing through his hand, has, looks like a Bell, Strange with Special, a couple other characters, but mostly the thing that I want to talk about is You Have Forgotten Me. This 4-cost discard spell could be backbreaking for Nathan, but what it really does is for DeCandio is it says, hey, I think you might have a Be Prepared over there. We're going to make sure it's not. We're going to make you discard 2, and that's Friends on the Other Side and a Goofy Daredevil discarded.
Yeah, and this was the perfect turn to get down this You Have Forgotten Me. Not only did Nathan have exactly 2 cards in hand, but you see Elsa into Be Prepared as, kind of a pseudo combo that comes up a lot against Ruby Amethyst, where they give themselves the option of singing Be Prepared and then redeveloping the board. But Brennan was able to make sure that wasn't going to happen to him unless Nathan gets lucky off the top.
All right, we found a Maui and a
Oof.
Pocket Watch off of the draw and the Magic Mirror, but the Maui is a nice pickup. We're going to eat the Maleficent. Maui survives, and now the question is, do we use Elsa to go into the Hades? The answer is no. Strange but Special is a little scary because we can play 2 ink and then quest for 5. The extra ink that you generate, or lore that you generate from having 10 ink is one of the core mechanics of Sapphire, and maybe one of the best Sapphire cards in the game. Those ramp effects like One Jump Ahead and Mickey Mouse add a lot of ink, but Bell lets you play 2 cards as ink a turn instead of just the 1 as well, pushing you eventually towards 10 so you can win the game by questing for 5 a bunch.
Yeah, and Brennan currently only has 8. And this is a great spot to, if he's able, develop that ninth and 10th ink. Really close the door on Nathan's chances of getting back into this game. But in order to do that, he's either going to have to get rid of his entire hand or draw some cards first. And Nathan, we saw here with the opportunity to quest with Elsa as well, but decided this is not a game I'm going to be winning on lore, and it is a game that I could be losing if I open myself up to Rapunzel, like we've been talking about. And Elsa only having 4 strength would be a prime opportunity for Hades to challenge.
All right, I see Let It Go in hand for DeCandio. I think the other is just a new dog, so a relatively unexciting pair of cards, all things considered. Knocking off the Elsa seems fine. Maybe using. I wouldn't even actually hate to see Belle challenge the Maui and then just use the Hades to quest a bunch because it's just large and it'll protect it from, things like Rafiki or Archimedes down the line. But looks like we're going to go ahead and let it go on the Elsa. And now, what do you want to do, Brennan?
Yeah, slightly caught in a bind here because the best possible turn would probably be let it go on the Elsa and then trade for the Maui with Hades, but that's only really rewarding if Brennan did have that 10 ink to quest for 5 with Bell,
Mhm.
but slightly low on resources, wasn't going to be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, he had 8 ink and 2 cards in hand, and one of was to let it go, and he can ink one and then play the other and only have 9, or he can ink both and then leave stuff in play to be vulnerable. But I like his play. Here we go. We're going to Magic Mirror and draw a card. Nathan Sawyer making up for that You Have Forgotten Me earlier. Still with the grip full. Facing down Hades at quest for 2 at 11 lores. Brendan Candia. Let's see if he has the answer.
And 3 cards in Nathan's hand, right off the top there, that have their roles, but are really not what he's looking for in this position. In a Pocket Watch, a Shield of Virtue, and a Gaston. Uh, don't line up very well against this Hades, so it just gets to go unchecked for another turn. Brennan gets to keep up this steady pressure.
All right, Brennan draws 1 jump ahead for turn. Can play the Stitch New Dog from hand to have a little bit more pressure. Walks a little bit into a Be Prepared, but I think at this point, Be Prepared is probably not going to get cast on the Hades, but maybe that's what he wants. We're going to go ahead and play that 1 jump ahead. Let's see if he wants to play the New Dog or hold on to it.
Yeah, you were talking last night about one of the situations you want to get into against Ruby Amethyst is where you can threaten them enough to get a Be Prepared down against only one of your characters, and Brennan might be set up to get into that position with this Hades if the first answer off the top for Nathan is a Be Prepared.
Yep. Brennan should be at 13 lore, I believe. We did just quest with the Hades up to 13. We'll see if Nathan can find the answer. We draw a card with the Magic Mirror. We're going to play Pocket Watch and give the Gaston Reckless and Rush. And that plus the Maui is going to take it down. And now we're going to go back Brennan's way.
And look at this. Nathan's last card is Be Prepared. So Brennan, still pretty low on resources, just kind of drawing threats that don't draw cards. But this Maleficent is kind of the perfect card in this spot. It's exactly the kind of thing that will induce a Be Prepared from Nathan if, as we see here, it's the answer that's available to him.
All right, and Brennan's still going to play around the Be Prepared, choosing not to play the New Dog. He's been holding on to that for a while. Knows that with Carefree Surfer, he absolutely needs some cheap characters to be able to play post-sweeper effect. Nathan going to draw a card with Magic Mirror, has a Be Prepared, and he's going to go ahead and play it 1 for 1. So kudos to Brendan DeCandio for sniffing that out and playing around as best as possible. Now we're going to go back Brennan's way. Nathan's thinking about inking. He's going to ink a Broom pass. It's going to give him a little more resources for the Magic Mirror so he can draw and play stuff in the same turn. Now we did draw Carefree Surfer, but we don't have 2 characters. Oh, excuse me. I was wrong. It was a Rapunzel. I think New Dog is the only card in hand still.
Yeah, and on the previous turn, when Nathan drew with the magic mirror, we saw a little hand gesture from him. I think that's because the draw was a second Be Prepared, which kind of takes a load off your mind when you're thinking about using a single Be Prepared on that first character.
All right. Mirror. Don't think he's drawn yet. Yep. I'm going to draw a card.
Players just confirming with each other that everything's above board. And I think one of the cards in Nathan's hand might be a Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, but he might have to ink in order to get that down.
May want to do a surprise attack next turn by blowing something up and challenging on the following turn as well, since we are a little light on being able to play here without playing that ink.
Yeah, and I think this was a good turn from Nathan. Might have even been completely without that ink from hand, but getting down the second magic mirror and taking this turn to draw with it, you put yourself 2 lore further behind maybe, but like you said, that rush from the pocket watch is going to give you, Nathan, a very swingy turn on the following.
All right, we have a Robin Hood Archer. Let's get the Robin Hood on screen. This Sapphire card doesn't see a ton of play, but mostly because the color Sapphire doesn't see a ton of play. This is one of the better big drops out of Sapphire. If your opponent has more resources than you, you get to blow it all up, or you get to draw a card. And it looks like we're going to force Nathan to blow it all up here with that Be Prepared by having these 2 characters in play with a lot of potential lore generation on the next turn. Oh, no. Instead, we're going to go for a hard sweeper here. This is
Perfect.
Maleficent Monstrous Dragon blowing one up and challenging the other. And, yeah, we're going to go back to Candio's way.
Yeah, this is a perfect answer from Nathan here. But a pretty good response from Brennan. A Hades plus a new dog is a decent amount of pressure that's going to continue to demand answers.
It's funny. I think he's been holding this new dog for so long, trying to wait for the Carefree Surfer. He actually just drew the Carefree Surfer, and this turn goes for Hades and the new dog. And I think this is enough to warrant the Be Prepared. And he might have needed to wait one more turn on the new dog. He's had such patience. Here it is. Be Prepared. Both characters going to the discard pile.
And
ink.
The game is really looking to be where Nathan wants it to be, especially with that second mirror. Any turn that Brennan is a little threat light, Nathan's going to be able to draw 2 extra cards instead of just 1. The pocket watch is going to give him some extra control, especially once we start seeing Elsa's. I think things are looking firmly in Nathan's favor.
Yeah, but Brennan's at 15 lore, so if we just play a couple of characters, we might force Nathan to make some suboptimal plays in order to interact with our stuff while it's readied. We're going to play You Have Forgotten Me, hold on to the Carefree Surfer for another turn because it's not drawing any cards. But we have these magic mirrors going, so You Have Forgotten Me looks quite bad. Draws 1.
Yeah, that was probably the last turn that You Have Forgotten Me was going to be effective at all. It was able to trade for a Dragonfire out of Nathan's hand, but still able to hold back that Be Prepared. And you said, Brennan's at 15 lore, which is pretty threatening. When we casted last week, I saw Ruby Amethyst win against 17, 18, 19 lore multiple times. I think this is much sweeter than this is a better spot than even Ruby Amethyst is able to win from a lot of the time.
All right, we're going to play Grandma Tala. Still going to hold on to the Carefree Surfer. I like this play. Stoyer here with 3 copies of Magic Mirror at his disposal and a ton of ink. Let's see what he wants to do. He at least has 14 because he was able to draw a card, play Mirror, and draw a card. And we're going to keep on turning that direction, churning through our deck, finding these answers. Things that can banish ready characters like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon, Dragonfire, and Be Prepared are all top of the list to keep DeCandio off balance and unable to physically win the game. Here's an Elsa that's going to freeze Grammatella, make sure it doesn't quest or sing. And we're going to give it Rush, and we're just going to bust it up. Grammatella down. Take that, Grandma.
Yeah. Grandma got run over by an Elsa.
That's pretty good. All right, here's a 1 jump ahead. Do we play the Carefree Surfer?
So
No,
Brennan with enough ink at his disposal at this point that with a couple lucky draws, thinks he'll be able to get the card draw off this Carefree Surfer. So he's gonna take his time and really try to extract enough value to be able to close the door. But time is kind of in Nathan's favor here, right? With all these mirrors.
Yeah, the longer the game goes, the better it's going to be for Nathan, more than likely.
Perfect.
The Ruby Amethyst deck is excellent at beating up on ready characters when it has its engines going. Things like Dragonfire are quite nice. Elsa can freeze stuff so that it exerts it, and then your Mauis and Rafikis and such can challenge. And with Pocket Watch, everything's a Rafiki.
And the perfect threat follow up here for Nathan. That one copy of Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor is going to get this game over with in short order.
All right, we're going to quest for 8. Nathan up to 11 already after just 2 big turns of questing, and it looks like we have a Monstrous Dragon that's going to be the play, and that's going to break up the Smee and make sure Carefree Surfer doesn't get any value, and then next turn Nathan's going to very easily quest up to lethal unless Brennan has some sort of removal spell for the BLT, the Brave Little Tailor. All right, we got brooms. We got garbage time. Let's see if DeCandio can find a miracle off the top of the deck. Nathan Stoyer played 2 different games against his deck in these first 2 games, right? The first game we played Archimedes ×2 and a couple Maleficent Sorceress, and we're able to get under the ramp effects from DeCandio and pressure him. And unfortunately for him, Nathan Stoyer going to be your victor here in round number 1 with Ruby Amethyst Control. This deck is what I would consider the defining deck of the metagame, and it's pretty on brand to see it win in round number 1 here in the hands of a very talented player. We do have a backup feature match. Let's head on over to the other match that's still going. We got owner of Apex Gaming, Kyle Huck, and he's going to be playing against one of our qualifier players from last night, the last chance qualifier, and that's Matthew Campo. Matthew Campo is going to be on Ruby Amethyst Control with Ursula's Cauldrons. And then Kyle Huck is going to be battling with his take on Emerald Amethyst Aggro. We're going to get all the graphics set up for you in just a second. And when we cut into the match, we'll see what's going on and make sure our spotter has everything right for you.
Yeah, Kyle, the only player in this event on Emerald Amethyst. This is a pretty aggressive list with classics like Flynn Rider, Cheshire Cat, and then topping off on Cusco, Mad Hatter, and a couple 6-drops in Genie on the Job and John Silver. Really trying to play characters that are difficult to interact with, or at least punishing, in the case of Mad Hatter and Cusco.
All right, let's cut on down to the match so we can watch these 2 players play. We'll get everything set up as we go. That's the wrong camera. It's fine. All right. So on your left, Matthew Campo with Ruby Amethyst. On your right, Kyle Huck with Amber Amethyst.
Emerald.
Yeah, it should be Emerald Amethyst. Excuse me. That's my apologies. We'll get that fixed in just a second. Genie on the Job for Kyle Huck and 10 Lore with Evasive. Looks pretty scary, but again, we know Ruby Amethyst is quite good at beating up characters, even if they do have Evasive, thanks to Dragonfire and Be Prepared and Maleficent Monstrous Dragon.
And kind of one of the weaknesses of the list that Matthew Campo brought, and he's of course aware of this. You can't be a Ruby Amethyst player and not be aware of Magic Mirror and the Queen, but he has elected not to bring any copies of either of those cards, so a little bit later on that hard card advantage, instead relying on Friends on the Other Side and Ursula, and then a large suite of evasive threats, filling out the rest of his deck to try to end the game.
All right, well, that warrants a Be Prepared. We're going to sing it with the Elsa after gaining some lore, and we're going to follow it up with a Goofy Daredevil. So a nice play there, a nice swingy turn from Matthew Campo. We're going to go back Kyle Huck's way. We'll get game counts updated for you in just a moment. We're in game number 3. These are untimed rounds. We have a mercy rule that we do for the Ruby Amethyst Mirror, where if the game number 1 takes 40 or more minutes, that's the only game they're going to play, but best of 3, untimed otherwise. Now the Genie comes down, we're going to bounce the Goofy Daredevil, and we'll see if Campo has an answer for this 6-drop. Let's get old Genie on the Job on the screen. This is one of my favorite cards in the game, and definitely my favorite Emerald card.
Right, and this was a good spot for Kyle. A lot of the decks that a lot of the cards that Ruby Amethyst plays are not cards you really want to bounce, right? Like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon or Ursula, but with some of these evasive cards, like that Goofy Daredevil we saw, Kyle was able to set Matthew back quite a bit on tempo, especially since all those evasive cards also are able to challenge Genie.
Right. All right, Campo. Let's see what you got. We're going to go with Pongo. Okay, has evasive. Can't quite challenge the Genie down, but maybe combined with a little bit of direct damage, maybe a buff, maybe another creature with evasive, we can knock out the Genie eventually. We're going to play a Pascal and a Flynn Rider, and we're going to go questing. Up to 14 is Kyle Huck. We'll see if he's able to take down this Ruby Amethyst control player before he's able to find another Be Prepared or an answer for the Genie. We're going to quest for 2-3. Can't challenge, so might as well. Up to 9.
And when you see a quest that fast, you know, your stomach kind of sinks, right? There's going to be another Be Prepared.
Yeah, and while your own characters are getting swept up in the Be Prepared, it doesn't matter too much because those are characters that either replace themselves or are relatively inconsequential. And Kyle Huck going to go ahead and play a Flynn Rider and a Rafiki. This is an aggressive Rafiki. We don't see that too much. We want to play that now so that we can start questing with it next turn.
Yeah, this has been a pretty good sequence of turns for Kyle. You know, was able to get down enough pressure to induce a Be Prepared, but still has 3 lore worth of follow up, which is going to take some removal spells from Matthew. Uh, Emerald Amethyst, one of the better decks at taking advantage of getting to that really high lore count, right? Where once you get into the range of 17, any Cusco off the top has to be answered by like exactly Be Prepared, right?
Yeah.
And that's the position Kyle is going to be trying to put himself in.
Now it looks like he's going to successfully put himself in it. We're going to play
Right.
just a Goofy Daredevil, and we're going to look at the top 2 with Cauldron. We're going to put one on top and one on bottom. And Huck's going to go back his way. He's going to be able to quest up to 17. And any Cusco off the top is very likely lethal. Let's see what he's got. That's a Cusco!
Whoa!
That's what we were just talking about!
No touchy. No touchy.
touchy. All right, here he is, Temperamental Emperor. And guess what? Multiple Be Prepareds in the graveyard already. And we'll see if Campo can find another Be Prepared. Look in the top 2 with Ursula's Cauldron. We can't sing it, so if we don't have it in hand, I don't think we're going to have a way out here. Oh, maybe, okay, we might have had lore totals incorrect, but it looks like Kyle's at 16 and not 17, so maybe Campo has a way out if he's able to knock off the Flynn Rider and the Rafiki this turn.
Also, one of the answers, if Kyle is able to get up to that high lore position, Matthew does have access to 4 copies of Ursula Power Hungry, which, you know, if you can pull back the Emerald Amethyst player just a little bit on lore, that could be enough. Here's Elsa.
All right, so we're going to lock down the Flynn and the Rafiki, and we're not going to challenge yet. We don't have to, so we're going to quest for 2. And apologies on the lore being incorrect, but now we are right, and Kyle Huck is 1 lore away from questing for victory. The Cusco can go ahead and gain 3, put him up to 19, and then any future quest should get the job done. We'll see if he wants to do that or maybe hold the Cusco for later, but here it is, 19. Last card in hand, what is it? He didn't show it to me. Show it to me now. Here's a Pascal, Rapunzel's companion, and Matthew Campo under the gun. Is it a Be Prepared?
Yeah, and playing out this Pascal, you know, plays a little bit into a Be Prepared, but if you don't play that Pascal, you're not threatening lethal, right?
Right.
Ruby Amethyst very good at answering exerted characters from hand, especially.
Yeah, thanks to the rush characters like Rafiki and Maui Hero to all. All right, so we're going to challenge the Cusco, knock it down. The Goofy can eat either Rafiki or Flynn Rider. And then you can play this other Elsa in hand and freeze the other 2 characters. Seems like the play. And then Kyle Huck's going to be in top deck mode. But as we know, in Lorcana, all your cards are live.
I don't actually think we have another Elsa. The card on the far left of Matthew's hand is a copy of Befuddle.
Oh,
which
well, that might do it too.
Does stave off Pascal.
Okay, I think maybe Campo is realizing he might not have answers to everything, but maybe he does. We're going to challenge the Flynn Rider, and that's going to allow us to befuddle the Pascal, but it can just come back down next turn. So Kyle's going to be able to continuously threaten lethal with the Pascal, any ready character. There's a Friends on the other side. We can play
Nice.
that and maybe look for a 1 or 2 drop to combine with the Pascal and threaten 2 lethal characters next turn. We find a Jasper, maybe a pair of Jaspers, and an Ink so we can play both.
And this is a good position to be in, especially when you're not up against a mirror, right? That's where Ruby Amethyst wants to be, is getting to the point of drawing multiple answers per turn. But Matthew's just drawing off the top here, and it's really only Be Prepared that's able to come back if Kyle's able to put up enough resistance.
Well,
But decides to hold on to those characters.
yeah, didn't want to over Ink. Gonna decide essentially to uh, play both characters next turn and be in the exact same position he could have been this turn, but has 1 extra resource at his disposal and makes Matthew have to have 1 extra answer. But Jasper's also threatening lethal, so Campo's going to need to have some way to deal with this ready character, and he's going to freeze it. Okay, now Huck being paid off for his patience, and we're going to play 2 characters here, maybe 3 characters here, and force Campo to have Be Prepared.
Well, you say paid off, but if we're looking at Lord totals here, Matthew has 6 in play, and that adds up to 20.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh no.
Well, the Elsa could have frozen and then double challenged anyway, right? So I think we were in trouble no matter what.
Well, yeah, just pointing out the game's not ending.
In Kyle's favor.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Unfortunately for Kyle Huck, unable to challenge either of the characters on the other side, and with Elsa questing for 3 and the other characters questing for 6 total, up to 20. Matthew Campo takes game number 3 and the match versus Kyle Huck, and is moving to 1-0. All right, we're going to come back to the booth here because that's all of our feature matches for round 1, and as we collect the results and things, we are going to begin round 2 here in just a few minutes. Just a reminder, this is not a Swiss-style tournament. This is a 16-person event where we are playing pods on day 1, and day 2 will be 8-person single elimination. All players are racing to 3 wins. The faster you get 3 wins, the better your tiebreakers for tomorrow. If you get 3 losses before you get 3 wins, you're out of the event. So players who took a loss, not in dire straits just yet. They have plenty of Lorcana left to play. For Bomat, I'm Tandy. This is round number 1 in the books. We'll be right back for round number 2. Don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to live coverage of the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational, brought to you by TCGplayer.com. I'm Tandy, joined by Bomat. Say hi, Bomat.
Hi, Bomat.
We are in day number 1 of the Invitational, and we are doing pod play. We've just completed the first round. We'll be moving on to the second round here in just a moment. Bomat, why don't you give us a little bit of rundown of what we're going to be watching in round number 2?
Yeah, we're gonna start with Kurt Spies, playing Amber Steel. Kurt was one of the qualifiers from our LCQ last night, and he's playing Amber Steel. This has been a popular deck. I think 6 players on some variety of Amber Steel in our 16-player field, and this is a pretty normal build. 12 copies of Stitch and 8 copies of those powerful 5-ink songs.
Now, one thing I want to note is that Kurt is not playing any copies of Lilo Making a Wish because it's non-inkable and it has a lot of tension with those 5-cost songs. And it also just is pretty weak in a lot of the aggro v aggro matchups featuring Steel. All of those AoE effects make it a little bit worse. And we're instead playing 4 copies of Simba, 1-drop from Steel, as well as 4 copies of Lantern to ramp into those Stitch Carefree Surfers.
Right. So then, speaking of Lilo, taking a look at the other side of the table, Frank Karsten also playing Amber Steel, but he is playing a much more aggressive build. You see those 4 copies of Lilo Making a Wish, 3 copies of Aladdin, Cornered Swordsman. Frank's an aggro player. Really decided he wanted to go for an aggro strategy, and he's going to be prioritizing leading with Lilo into Simba.
All right, well, the players are in the feature match area and just about ready to start. So let's head on down and start round number 2 of the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational, brought to you by TCGplayer.com, your leader for all things TCG related. So get your singles, get your, head on down the match. What are you doing? Wait, why are you still looking at me? I don't know. On your left, Frank Carson, Magic Hall of Famer. That's the wrong camera. On your left, Frank Carson, Amber Steel. We got Dan May in the booth. Normally we got Taryn, but he decided to play this event. Dan is we're not from here. We're working on the fly, right? We are working with what we got, so we're trying our best. We got Frank Carson on your left, Magic Hall of Famer, Kurt Spies on your right. Both playing Amber Steel, Stitch Blitz aggro. This is In my opinion, the best deck in the format, and at least my favorite deck to play. Member of Team Ultimate Guard is Frank Carson, and repping those colors, Ultimate Guard is one of our sponsors for this event as well. Big shout out to them. Thank you so much for that. As these players are drawing their opening hands, we're going to see how they mulligan since we did get a little bit early. I know I talked a lot with Frank. He actually stayed with me all week, and we
Hmm.
talked a little bit about the event and play tested some to help him out. And in this matchup, he likes to keep grab your sword in your opener. I told him that I like to mulligan every uninkable because I
Hmm.
just like smooth draws. But if I have an aerial spectacular singer with that grab your sword, maybe we keep it because it's a nice little 3-4 curve.
Yeah. Speaking of songs, though, the other uninkable song in A Whole New World, we just saw Frank put 2 copies of that back into the deck in addition to a third card. Uh, Maybe not the matchup where he wants A Whole New World if his opponent is going to be able to take just as much advantage of it as he is.
All right, well, we are underway here for round number 2, and we'll see who's going to be on the play. Kurt was actually our LCQ winner from last night, and of the players in the LCQ, I have to say he was my favorite to win. His play was
Hmm.
crisp, and his deck list looks very well thought out. So I have him pegged as one of the better players in the event today. Old school Magic grinder, and came all the way from the Northeast somewhere and just crushed everybody.
Yeah, Kurt's play was definitely impressive. Got a ton of value out of Grab Your Swords in every match we watched.
All right, here is turn 1 hook for both players. These are defensive measures against Simba Protective Cub, the 2-drop bodyguard from Amber that often comes down on 2 to give some buffer to your 1-drops. The hooks are likely going to stare at each other since they don't quest well, and they get knocked down by the opposing hook. Here's a looter. This one costs Simba. Is a newer addition to many of these Amber and Steel decks. It only has 1 strength, and that's its biggest downside for sure. But you're
Hmm.
able to loot away some of those uninkables like the 5-drop hook, as well as grab your sword or
Whole New World.
whole new world.
Yeah, Whole New World is definitely the big one. Because what you want to do before playing that card is usually empty your hand as much as possible. But when 2 of the cards in your hand are a Whole New World, you can't really do that. So finding ways to sneak in, these ways to filter through extra copies of Whole New World has led players towards Simba, Future King, and yeah, you mentioned the game maybe tends to slow down a little bit when both players start with Captain Hook, kind of afraid
Right.
of letting your opponent get some free value off. So we're going to see some jockeying for position here until one player is able to get down and grab your sword.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? Like if you don't quest, you don't challenge, you don't do anything, eventually whoever plays grab your sword first is likely going to win.
Yeah.
Kurt did ink an aerial spectacular singer last turn. Usually that's a note that either you're low on ink or that you have an extra, and it looks like both are true for
Yes.
Kurt. Okay, gonna ink a Maximus is Frank. We have 1 copy of that in our deck as an extra big bodyguard. Frank is a big fan of ones. He's a math guy, and
Hmm.
math guys often figure out a bunch of holes to fill with 1-ofs, and he does that in Magic a lot, and he's doing it here in Lorcana as well. We ink our aerial. We drew another one, so we're gonna play that. And no, we're gonna instead we're gonna shift onto hook.
Wow. Yeah, let's get this card up on screen. Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts.
That wow, a very cheap and early grab your sword here from Kurt, and that's gonna off the shift of the Captain Hook thinking a happy thought is gonna knock off the Captain Hook from Frank Carson. Maybe a little premature, but we know Kurt loves to empty his hand because he has a whole new world and he's trying to play that next turn, I think.
Exactly. Getting to sing consecutively 2 turns in a row is a great way to empty your hand for that Whole New World. And this thinking happy thoughts, we haven't seen that third line of text come into play. Stolen Dust, characters with cost 3 or less can't challenge
Mhm.
Captain Hook. And even if Kurt didn't have access to the grab your sword, this would have been a great answer to the Hook and Prince Eric from Karsten.
Yeah, those early challenger characters can't challenge the Captain Hook thinking happy thought. He's flying around. Can't
Way up
touch
in
him.
the air.
All right, we're gonna play a couple of characters. Is Frank Carson, Simba bodyguard, but not gonna play in bodyguard mode. No quest from the Eric, and we're gonna head back Kurt's way. And I have a feeling we're about to see a big wheel. We can, okay, so we can go ink aerial, play a hook, wheel, look for a couple of other cheap things to play. or we can play aerial and dig for a song. But Kurt here we know is extremely aggressive with the whole new worlds, and
Yeah.
he knows he's getting a full 7, whereas Frank is only getting 4. So we're gonna go ahead and do it since we'll also have initiative on playing the characters with mostly full inkwell this turn.
Yeah, if Kurt had decided to, play out that aerial first, take a turn off, you can get yourself into trouble if your opponent's able to get as low as cards as you are. So any opportunity Kurt finds to kind of push ahead and then slam that whole new world, he's going to take it.
All right, Smash is going to knock off the Stitch New Dog. While it's the weakest character on the table, it is the shift target for Stitch Rockstar, which is a great play for Frank next turn. And taking that away from Frank is a nice way for Kurt to ensure that he has board dominance next turn. All right, Frank, I'm going to go back his way. I see a Rapunzel. We can use that to heal to Eric. But neither character in play can challenge or quest too well. And we'll see if Frank wants to just deploy a couple more characters or if he wants to be a little interactive with some removal of his own.
Yeah, Frank is kind of, the early game didn't play out in the most optimal way for Frank. He's really looking to get on the ground fast with these aggressive characters. So now we're reaching the mid game, and Kurt's deck might have bigger tools and be able to more cleanly answer Frank's threats through the middle of this game.
All right, Rapunzel going to give a few more cards. If you're Kurt, your plan is to wheel aggressively and as much as possible. When your opponent, after drawing 7, plays another thing that draws cards, that means that they're not really challenging you on the board. And here, Kurt's got to be pretty happy about that. Even though Rapunzel drawing cards is usually pretty good, when you already have 7, going up to 9 is like nothing.
Yeah. We've been through a few aerials already, but this would be a great spot for Kurt if he had another aerial to dig for another whole new world. Instead, I do think we're going to see this lantern come down. Kurt wants to make use of these cards as quickly as possible, and developing his resources is a road to that.
Yeah, and he does have a Carefree Surfer, which with the
Multiple.
Lantern means that he can play Carefree Surfer next turn. And Lantern is an integral part of Kurt's deck, but he's built it to utilize it well.
Yeah.
His deck is mostly characters, but more importantly, the Lantern helps with an early shift on Stitch Rockstar, but it also just helps enable these 4 copies of Carefree Server, which are a great late game tool. We're going to quest for 2, Kurt up to 3 lore, and now we're going to go back Frank's way. Chooses not to quest with the Baby Hook. I'm okay with that.
Frank is playing 1 copy of Lantern himself. That's there's a couple different routes you can take with Lantern. Frank has taken the light approach, doesn't want to draw too many, where Kurt is really integrating it into his game plan with a full 4 copies.
Yeah. All right. So Frank here with a lot of options can go ink plus grab your sword, and that wipes out everything except for the shifted hook. Then we can quest for 4. May want to deploy a character or 2 this turn and then try to maybe sing that grab your sword later on, but usually that requires an aerial spectacular singer, which I don't see in his hand.
And this Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts, Frank can't effectively challenge it with these lower costed characters, but it's also not especially threatening at this point. With only 1 lore, the reason these Amber Steel decks are turning to this Captain Hook is really for that explosive sing that we saw on turn 3 out of Kurt. This is the only way in Steel to pay 3 ink and immediately sing a 5-cost song. If you're in Sapphire, you do have access to Aurora, but this is kind of your only option in Amber Steel.
All right, Simba. A little Simba action. Battling each other, maybe. Saving the Prince Eric for later for something bigger, better. Yeah, once you exert the Simba, it's vulnerable to be challenged by the opposing Captain Hook. So I feel like that's what he was going for there. We're going to use Rapunzel to cycle 1 card and refresh that Simba, but not too bad if you're Kurt. I'd be pretty happy with that turn if I was him. And now Frank has the ability to go ink into a 1-drop if he so chooses, and I see a Lilo hanging out, but maybe that gets caught up in the grab your sword, so maybe you want to save that for later. Gonna go ahead and put it down and make Kurt have the answer. All right, we're gonna go back Kurt's way and see what he's got. A handful of pretty weak cards, if I do say so myself.
And you mentioned the Rapunzel in the previous turn, right after that whole new world, maybe not being the strongest play, drawing cards. We've now seen Frank has spent 9 ink over these past 2 turns and only gotten 3 strength out of the deal. So Frank is not really going to be able to effectively contest what Kurt has going on with pretty low strength out of most of his characters. And Kurt is perfectly happy with that after the whole new world. Frank isn't threatening a win anytime soon, and he's not threatening to interact very efficiently.
All right, here's Carefree Surfer. This is a nice slam dunk. Draw 2, big body. And now for Kurt, what do you want to do? We can do a lot of challenging here. I like Baby Hook goes into the Simba. I actually kind of like Big Hook goes into Simba and survives, and then Baby Hook goes into the Eric and survives. But I think that Kurt is just constantly aware of the threat of grab your sword and trying to make sure he has 3 or higher willpower on as many characters as possible. So good play on him on that part, I think. Sometimes the obvious challenge is not the right challenge because of cards like Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, Grab Your Sword, Rapunzel.
Yeah, every point of damage and every point of willpower can end up mattering, especially with these steel decks. You get combinations of 2 Tinkerbells or a Tinkerbell and a Grab Your Sword. So these super efficient trades, like where you're sending a Simba into a Prince Eric, for example, sometimes ends up coming out in the wash if your opponent does have that Giant Fairy, something like that. We do see a Giant Fairy.
All right, that's going to deal 1 to the Hook, 1 to the Carefree Surfer, and 1 to the new dog, but it doesn't quite kill anything. Unfortunately for Frank, we still can't challenge the Hook because it does have that special ability, Stolen Pixie Dust. And if you're Frank, I'm not sure really what to do. Maybe just nothing, and then you sing Grab Your Sword next turn. Deciding.
Yeah, you kind of have to be happy with the Giant Fairy just sitting there as a threat for next turn. It might take a lot of resources for Kurt to deal with, and it's really going to slow down his ability to quest without getting punished. When I talked about Frank spending a lot of ink and only getting a few strength out of the deal, Tinkerbell Giant Fairy is kind of the answer to that. That's how you really start getting your board position back.
All right, Lula making a wish, gonna do what she does best and kiss goodbye.
Yeah. Got to get the lore while the getting's good. Kurt's gonna have plenty of answers, incidental ones even to Alilo.
All right, we're gonna full quest here. It looks like for 3 more up to 8. Now we're gonna go back Kurt's way. The Tinkerbell Giant Fairy plus a Grab Your Sword in hand is gonna threaten a full board clear next turn if Kurt decides to do some challenging or questing. We'll see how he wants to sequence, how he best can protect himself. Ooh, I saw a Grab Your Sword of his own over there. Not that bag-breaking form right now, but maybe in conjunction with some challenges or another damage effect could be quite strong.
Yeah, Kurt's very good at getting maximum value out of Grab Your Sword, and instead we're going to get maximum value out of Rapunzel.
Yeah, you hate to see that if you're Frank, but the moment you quest or challenge, that opens you up to your opponent's Rapunzel most of the time. So, you gotta progress the game at some point. The Rapunzel is gonna get some value at some point as well. And now, hopefully for Frank, he's able to utilize the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy to pressure his opponent's stuff. Now, Kurt could just say, "I don't really want to challenge your stuff because that Tinkerbell Giant Fairy is quite scary."
Now, one of the virtues of the Rapunzel play from Kurt here is all the damage that was on the Captain Hook got wiped away, and now if Frank wants to challenge it with Giant Fairy, he's going to need some damage on it first before he's able to get the extra 2 damage out of Giant Fairy.
Mm-hmm.
So Kurt is, the best follow-up here from Frank, I think, would be a second Giant Fairy, right? That sets up the Hook to be able to be taken down by your first Giant Fairy, and
Allows you to kill the Ariel as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so Kurt gonna go ahead and play out a bunch of stuff to use all of his ink, and plays a Simba Future King and discards a Whole New World. Has a ton of cards in hand, as do both players. That card is pretty weak in the aggro v aggro mirror. We saw Kurt utilize it nicely in the early turns, but that's basically the only time you're going to be able to cast it without it being potentially game ending from the other side, and you got to be kind of careful how you sequence. A pretty weak hand for Carson. We see 3 copies of A Whole New World staring, and we'll see if he wants to grab your sword into some challenging here. Seems like the only real play.
Right. And it's going to be a pretty good grab your sword here, but things are still not looking great for Frank. Unlikely to be able to get much value at all out of these whole new worlds, and doesn't really have the filtering to be able to turn them into anything more effective with only 1 copy of Simba Future King.
I think you're seeing a deck construction advantage here from Kurt. Kurt has a ton of more inkables than normal, not playing the Lilo making wishes, instead using the
Hmm.
Simbas, and the Simbas can let you loot away those extra mediocre dead ones, like the extra Whole New Worlds or the weaker characters that you would draw later in the game. But here is Grab Your Sword. That's going to do a lot of damage to the board and clear a couple things. Tinkerbell Giant Fairy is going to challenge the Captain Hook, finally getting off the table after it did so much damage. And the 2 damage from Giant Fairy also going to take out Ariel Spectacular Singer. Right, Carson going to ink a Simba. And then play a Lantern. Here we go.
You mentioned Lilo not being inkable, and we did see Frank draw that Lilo in, what was it, turn 3 or 4 maybe, and just played it out. It got too lore, and then it got eaten up almost for free. Really a lot less effective on any turn of the game other than turn 1. And
I think it's pretty ineffective on turn 1 in a lot of the creature matchups as well. So Kurt actually removing it from his deck made a lot of sense. And we talked about that a bit during deck building, Frank Carson and I, when we were just like driving up for the event. And the Lilos, at the very least, maybe reducing the number in your deck seems right, but Kurt just foregoing them altogether. And you have to wonder, like, maybe that's just the future move.
yeah, coming back to the game here, the best possible card for Kurt there was another Rapunzel to be able to take some damage off the Stitch, take down the Giant Fairy, and develop a commanding board position.
Yeah, and now no board position for Frank, and he's likely out of it. Draws the 4th Whole New World. He can play it, but he's so far behind on board that he's just basically fallen into a hole.
A whole new different point of view. I don't remember the rest of the words.
Whether you're near or far, a shining star. Something like that.
Something like that.
All right, so Lantern here for Frank is allowing for a little bit of help for casting characters, but does not help for casting this Whole New World. And this is the most desperate Whole New World I've ever seen. Discards all 4 of them to draw 7. Let's see what we got. But not a lot of ink to work with after, and facing down a relatively large board from Kurt. We'll see if Frank's able to do anything to get back in this game. Maybe Arrow Spectacular Singer into double Grab Your Sword next turn could be a way out. And I see an Ariel in hand, so maybe that's the move.
Yeah, this is really the most effective way Frank's going to be able to set up a tempo swing on the following turn, like you said. But we haven't seen any copies of Smash out of Kurt yet, I don't think. And that's really what would close the door on this Ariel if he's able to find a copy.
Okay, going back Kurt's way. Commanding board position. A lot of cards in hand after that draw 7 and first to market. We're going to start with a Rapunzel, healing 3 on the Carefree Surfer. Carefree Surfer with Rapunzel, it has such a high willpower that it makes so much sense why Kurt's playing forward. He's built his deck around Lantern, and with the Carefree Surfer, Rapunzel, Rockstar, and A Whole New World, he's able to always be flush with resources and able to use the extra ink from the Lanterns. And Rapunzel here with Carefree Surfer is just such a nice addition to the archetype. Most decks are playing like 2 Carefree Surfer, but I think the Lanterns ramping into it really changed the dynamic of the card. And I actually don't even really like it in the deck outside of when you're playing max Lanterns.
We saw Kurt here with just an overabundance of resources after that Whole New World.
Oh, one of those Rapunzels is sick. You can't quest. 1 second.
Yep. Oh, there it goes. They got it. But as I was saying, decided with all these extra resources in hand, Kurt played out the Stitch New Dog and then shifted onto it. Effectively only a 1 ink discount, but he was then able to play a Simba, draw a card, set up his board to be better protected, and doesn't really mind throwing that New Dog under the shift.
Okay, so we have Ariel Singer. I saw at least one grab your sword. Do we have two? We do have two. This might be a big board clear or close to it, although you probably still won't be able to clear everything. Those Rapunzels do have 5 willpower, but we're going to start with a Be Our Guest. I guess looking for a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, finds 6
Just a
Rockstar.
rock star.
Spins 2. Another Be Our Guest.
Now, the interesting thing about this at this point is that Frank has tapped himself out of playing a Carefree Surfer on this turn, which I think would be a decent plan B if we're not going to be able to get down a giant fairy. But this first grab your sword does come down. Get out the dice. Oh,
All right,
not
not enough.
enough.
And Frank gonna pack it in. 2 grab your sword wasn't gonna be enough either, thanks to the Rapunzels and the Carefree Surfer, as well as the Rockstar. And game number 1 goes to our last chance qualifier winner, Kurt Spies. And both these players here are on Amber Steel Stitch Blitz, but the unique and explosive take on the archetype from Kurt Spies dominated our last chance qualifier last night. So far, he's 1-0 and up a game against Hall of Famer Frank Carson. When I say Hall of Fame, I mean the Magic the Gathering Hall of Fame. Frank Carson is no slouch when it comes to card games. He's been a member of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame for about a decade now. He has a PhD in math, probability theory, and game theory. And he writes for a lot of websites, including TCGplayer.com, our primary sponsor, Channel Fireball, Ultimate Guard, and Wizards of the Coast. He recently got a new job from Wizards of the Coast last year, and he's been basically the RCQ guy. Like, here's what's going
Yeah.
on, here's the regional championships. It's been really informative, really great stuff from him. We're glad to have him out to the event. And it was fun hanging out with him all week. His favorite Disney movie, The Lion King. Nice. Visited over 60 countries, and he hails from Eindhoven, Netherlands. His opponent is Kurt, who we don't have a graphic for because he was a last chance qualifier last night at midnight.
Yeah.
But Kurt is no stranger to competitive card games, and it looks like he is looking to not only dominate Lorcana, but so he has a good history in Magic the Gathering as well. And multiple people who saw him enter the room last night for the last chance qualifier said, "Oh, he's probably gonna win."
Yeah.
And he did.
Even a few of our invitational qualifier players kind of groaned, Oh, come on. I have to play
What
against
are you
Kurt.
doing here?
I have to play against Kurt too in this thing.
Yeah. All right. As these players are shuffling up here for game number 2, we're going to talk a little bit about our sponsors. First and foremost, I'd like to thank TCGplayer.com. They're our flagship sponsor for the event, and they're your one-stop shop for all things trading card game related, from Pokemon to Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, and now Disney's Lorcana. They're the marketplace for all singles, and check out TCG Player Infinite, their article side of things, if you want some strategy on how to get better at Disney's Lorcana. You can check out a couple articles that the Lost Boys posted on TCG Player Infinite earlier this week with a full list of the qualified players, their deck lists, as well as a metagame breakdown for what we were expecting for this event. The event itself is a little bit different than what we were expecting, I think.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just a lot of Sapphire. Wasn't expecting a lot of
the
Sapphire.
metagame,
But yeah,
yes.
quite a bit. Also want to say thank you so much to Ultimate Guard for sponsoring the event. They have awesome products such as the Sidewinder deck box, Boulder deck box, Archive deck box. The Archive is the big baddie that helps contain your cubes and commander decks. And I'm a big fan of the Katana sleeves, and I know that's what Frank Carson was using to sleeve up his deck this morning. And last but not least, thank you so much to Cards and Castles 2, the new Tactics card battler on Steam. It's free to play. It's currently in early access, and if you use code Apex Gaming, you get 5 free booster packs inside the client. It's a fun little card battler. The resource system's nice. You start at 1 gold. You generate 1 extra gold every single turn. You draw a card from your deck every turn, and those cards do awesome things inside the game engine. And the Tactics Battlefield allows for some really robust and deep gameplay. We'll be posting some videos later on of me demoing the game if you're interested in seeing how it plays. Now, the players are here and ready for game number 2, so let's head on down and watch and see if Frank can come back. He's down a game, starting off with Captain Hook.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to Frank a little yesterday about his deck selection, and he mentioned, the lover of aggro recently, of course, has been playing a lot of Boros Convoke and Magic, So he decided he wanted to play aggro and zeroed in on the Lilo into Simba curve, and then looked for the best color to supplement that, and decided he was a fan of steel because it kind of lets you add a second deck into your aggro deck and play two powerful game plans. But we haven't seen those Lilo starts from him in either of these first two games.
Yeah, he had the Lilo last game, but it was kind of late and rather ineffective. You know, he was on the back foot early thanks to Kurt's whole new world that was played on, I think, turn 4.
Mm.
And it was pretty backbreaking, all things considered. Turn 2 Lantern from Kurt. That's a great one here because the Captain Hook can challenge the Simba. Neither character on the other side is wanting to quest, and Frank here going to just say go a bunch. We're going to look at the top 4 with Ariel, and we're going to put him on the bottom. Big miss. That happens a lot, but Singer 5 on the aerial makes it still one of the strongest cards in the game, if not the strongest card in the game. Being able to sing a whole new world ahead of schedule is ridiculous in these aggro decks where you can empty your hand, but being able to play Grab Your Sword for super cheap is also quite strong in the other side of the coin, the aggressive matchups.
Yeah, both Grab Your Sword and A Whole New World. One of the keys to maximizing those cards is timing them correctly, and that includes being able to play them earlier if that's the perfect spot, which is why you see plays like what Kurt just made. Just trade a smash for that aerial, get it off the field. We don't want Frank to have any good opportunities to sing.
All right, Frank gonna play another lantern on his side of things. Still no questing. Doesn't want to trade Simba for Captain Hook. Instead, hoping to use Grab Your Sword to sweep up the hook, so no value. But the same can be said for Kurt. So it's just a weird waiting game where the
Mm-hmm.
first person to play Grab Your Sword usually gets a commanding position. Here's a Simba, future king. We're gonna loot one. See what Kurt wants to discard. And is 2 Tinkerbell Tactician. He's only playing 2. A lot of the steel
Yeah.
lists like to curve Tactician into the Giant Fairy in the 3/4 slot, but Kurt less interested in that and more so focused on natural curving, using Lantern for ramping, but the Tinkerbell Tactician still an integral part of the steel package.
And part of the reason Kurt is a little more comfortable trimming down on those tiny tacticians is that he has a second, or rather third shift package with these captain hooks, meaning he has a few more outs to be able to sing ahead of schedule, so he doesn't need to rely on tiny tactician as often.
All right, so we're in the squeeze here as Kurt. If you hold your hand, you lose to a whole new world. If you play your hand, you lose to Grab Your Sword. And unfortunately for Kurt, I believe Frank has both. And I think he drew ink number 5 for the turn. So once he plays that ink number 5, he'll be able to sweep 3 of the characters off the opposing side of the board. Maybe wants to get a little greedy and wait a little while before he does it. I saw he drew Stitch Rockstar for the turn, I think, and inking that one is kind of meh, but it is what it is. Very low on resources here is Frank Karsten.
Yeah, Kurt also pretty low. Even Carefree Surfer, you're getting to the point of the game where you're interested in playing that, but Kurt's not quite gonna have enough ink for a couple turns now, and this maybe if he draws an inkable off the top, this Stitch Rockstar could come down and threaten to start drawing more cards off the top.
Oh, no, it's Arrow Singer. We're going to go ahead and do that. Top 3, top 4. We found a Grab Your Sword. Probably going to take that. No, we're going to take Be Our Guest as ink, okay? And we can play that, look at the top 4, and look for a character, or we can just play it into the inkwell. See what he wants to do. I would just play it into the inkwell personally. And that's what he's going to do too. All right, going back to Kurt's Wait. Let's see if he has another answer for the aerial spectacular singer. Doesn't look like it, but does have a Stitch Rockstar, which he can shift with no follow-up, but can get it onto the table, which means it's going to be pretty scary next turn.
Yeah, this is an awkward turn for Lantern. If that was an inkable card, Kurt would just be able to play out the Rockstar and have this new dog still sitting around as an extra character. But instead, if he's going to play his cards, it has to be in this way.
All right. Kurt knows that he's about to get whooped by a Grab Your Sword, so he's going to go questing with the Simba, find to throw it away for the lore. And now Frank, we're going to go back his way. Doesn't actually have to play a whole new world. Hands are almost empty for both players, and it looks like he's Going to be somewhat ahead on board once he sings Grab Your Sword. We'll see how he wants to sequence this turn. I don't think playing a whole new world is going to be right for him because his opponent seems to have a small board advantage and a small resource advantage.
Yeah, this especially if you whole new world here, Kurt is almost guaranteed to just get a ton of value out of this Rockstar and just flood the board. At which point Frank is really only looking for a second grab your sword, but decides to play neither card this turn.
Well, I think by playing neither, he's saying, okay, well, you're going to have a big Stitch Rockstar turn, and my best follow-up is a Grab Your Sword for that. So we're just going to chill. Here comes Simba Bodyguard. It's going to draw a card. And we do draw Grab Your Sword, but it only kills Frank Carson's hook. So maybe not the best use for it here. Kurt might want to loot, but he might want to hold on to it as well.
You know what's going to break this game wide open is the first player to draw a Rapunzel, I think. You're going to be able to set up a situation, especially once Kurt starts questing. Both players are going to start questing and challenging, and whoever draws Rapunzel is going to pull way ahead, I think.
Well, Kurt still thinks there's a Grab Your Sword over there, willing to just quest with these small dorks that are likely going to get swept up in the muck. And we'll see if Frank wants to go a challenging or if he wants to sing any of the songs in hand and how he wants to play the rest of his turn. We both have Stitch Rockstar active, so a slew of 1 and 2 cost characters means they each replace themselves, but both players have Grab Your Sword, which can take care of most of them next turn.
Yeah, looks like Frank maybe gonna start with the sing. Though I wouldn't be surprised to see him start with a Captain Hook instead. If you're gonna draw cards during your turn, it's usually better to do that first. Here's the Grab Your Sword.
Are we wheeling?
Mmm.
Okay, so Frank says, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and sing a whole new world. I have a dominant board presence here. We're going to play the hook as an ink, and then we are going to sing a whole new world with Stitch Rockstar. And now we get to play a bunch of follow-ups here. And if Kurt wasn't able to draw Tinkerbell or Grab Your Sword off the top 7 or 8 cards, then Frank Carson might be in a dominant position here. Let's see what he's got. I see a handful of hooks. I see a Rapunzel that doesn't do anything at the moment, but could be great next turn.
The Rapunzel can do something thanks to that Simba.
Ah.
We can draw a couple cards and shrink Kurt's board a little. And one of the advantages as we get into this longer, back and forth trading game, Kurt is playing 4 copies of Carefree Surfer where Frank only has 2. And that 8 willpower is really key in these steel matchups. So if Kurt can start slamming those characters, keeping his hand size up, I think he has the advantage as the game goes long.
All right, Frank here. Both players with a grip full, but Frank going to go ahead and play Rapunzel and heal 2 on the Simba and draw 2. And then still has the ability to play 2 or 3 cheap characters and draw cards off the Stitch Rockstar. We'll see what he wants to deploy. All of them replace themselves, so if you get swept, it's not a huge deal, but has to keep that in the back of his mind at all times, basically.
Another thing to keep in the back of his mind, the most explosive turn for Kurt here could even involve shifting Tinkerbell onto this tiny Tinkerbell. So once you start turning your characters sideways, there's not a whole lot you can do to avoid that, unless, of course, Frank can find an answer to the Tinkerbell. But Kurt is going to have his pick as far as challenging with the giant fairy if he found one off that whole new world.
Okay, Frank, just shoving all in. We're going to play a bunch of cheap characters here and quests, and we're going to go back Kurt's way after that big explosive turn. That was the same turn when we cast Grab Your Sword. So it was Grab Your Sword, Wheel, Rapunzel, 1, 2, 3, 4 characters after that, and so many cards drawn for Frank and Kurt now in a bad way. Slightly behind on board, and needs Grab Your Sword or Big Tink here to catch back up. I see the Big Tink. It allows the Tactician in hand to maybe eat the Simba with the shift, but this feels so bad.
Yeah, this is a pretty good Simba here. Without Simba, the Tinkerbell would be looking to trade off for the Rockstar after that one damage is applied to it. But Simba really makes things awkward, especially as most Amber Steel decks at this point are playing 0 copies of Fire the Cannons, which some players on different steel combinations have turned to as a way to kind of efficiently get their board position back after a whole new world.
Right.
But neither player has access to that card.
In the Steel Ember decks specifically, I think Nicholas Roush and Don Delosier are both playing a couple copies of that Fire the Cannons, and I know that Young Dingo is playing 4 copies of Fire the Cannons, but
Right.
he's playing Steel Amethyst mid.
Exactly.
All right, Kurt, what you got? Big Tink Shift. It's probably the best you got so far because he doesn't quite have access to grab your sword here.
Yeah. And maybe maybe a couple awkward copies of Whole New World in Kurt's hand as well.
It do be like that.
Do be like that. Working things out. The best you can really do. I guess the Stitch Rockstar could take down the Simba if you really wanted to get at your opponent's Rockstar with Tank.
Okay, looks like we're not. We're just going to go challenge the Simba to keep the Tinkerbell alive for a turn. Get out the dice! Get out the dice!
Yeah. Gotta get into the black dice.
Yeah, that's going to be the first Lost Boys t-shirt is get out the dice. And it's going to be a Tinkerbell giant fairy screaming it into the broken ship that she's holding. It's going to be awesome. I love it. All right, well, Kurt here. Going to do a lot thinking, but challenges the Simba, and that allows him to deal some extra damage to the Rockstar, smash finishes off the Rockstar. We can sing a whole new world, or we can challenge something, and I'm curious what he wants to do. And he's really in the tank on it because singing a whole new world is obviously dangerous, but his hand is pretty weak, and Frank has a dominating board.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to sing Whole New World here. I think you're they're gonna be taking up the space in your hand for the rest of the game if you don't play it this turn. I think, and Kurt kind of needs to find another tank or another grab your sword, but decides to hold on to them.
All right, back Frank Carson's way. Grip full. Looks like a really good turn coming for him. And he's already ahead, so this might shut the door on Kurt for game number 2 and force game 3. We'll see what he wants to do.
If only he was playing Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, we could heal them all up. You know, after rewatching The Lion King, I had a revelation.
What's that?
Hakuna Matata is toxic, man.
Really?
Yeah. Means you don't got to care about anything. Right? Socially, whatever, right?
You know,
If you listen to the lyrics,
it's only toxic if you accept it in a toxic way, I think.
look, Nala knew it was toxic. Nala came over to Simba and was like, what are you talking about, bro? You're king. Come on home. Be king. What's this Hakuna Matata nonsense?
Yeah, Hakuna Matata is great until you have actual responsibilities, I
Right,
guess.
exactly. When all you do is eat grub worms and lay
Yeah.
around all day like a warthog. All right, well, Carson here. Sequencing the turn, I'm assuming once he figures out the line, it'll be a bit faster. We do have, it looks like another grab your sword. No. Different kind of sword. It's Aladdin with a sword. Here's a Carefree Surfer. Going to draw 2. Now after Kurt, that is going to make casting the whole new world a much easier proposition next turn. And now Frank can challenge the Tinkerbell Big Fairy and then quest a bunch. But that's basically all she wrote. Turn's about over here.
I do like this play from Carson, though. Any more Rockstar plays, there's no more Rockstar. Any more development with, multiple cards instead of this one big Carefree Surfer just puts you in that much worse shape against Grab Your Sword or Tank. And Frank decides, I'm wide enough. Let me go a little bit tall, get this high willpower character down.
All right, a big lore turn there for Frank as well. Gains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe up to 7 total now. And Kurt here going to lead off with Simba. We're going to loot and draw.
Wow. So Kurt decided I'm gonna make use of these Simbas to get through these whole new worlds, but one of those Simbas drew another copy of Whole New World. Not quite out of it
Yeah,
yet.
yeah. Well, we can sing Whole New World here. Look for Grab Your Sword, which can deal with both hooks, the Lilo, and the Mermaid on the other side of things.
And this should be a pretty good Whole New World, I think, because Tinkerbell Giant Fairy also does it, right? It takes care of at least the hooks and the small Simba, which is kind of the next best thing, and would even give you enough damage on Rapunzel to be able to take it down with Stitch. But Kurt may be still afraid of what Frank could do with a fresh hand. So many cards, though. You'd think you would really want to start off with a whole new world for Kurt.
We're gonna go to McDonough. Maybe just saying I
Be our
might be able to
guest.
beat your hand as is. Playing a Whole New World probably not the way to go. And we have a bunch of card draw with the Rockstar going. Looks at the top four, finds another Aerial, Carefree Surfer.
And this, Be Our Guest here, singing with a Stitch, it kind of removes some outs for at least this turn. You do get this aerial, but you're not going to be able to play a Grab Your Sword if you find it. What Kurt was really looking for was a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, but he missed. A couple copies of aerial now. That can be a pretty threatening turn here for Kurt, maybe, if he gets one or both of these aerials down. It's threatening to really respond to Frank's turn, but it's going to be, a turn later, and Frank's going to be able to do a lot of damage on the scoreboard in the meantime.
All right, Kurt in the tank. We're gonna go Stitch New Dog. Draw a card. We have a Rapunzel, which we can use to heal. I believe we drew a Simba Bodyguard we can play to draw another card. Ariel can look for some more songs. The lore is still wrong. Can we get a check on our spotter here? Because I know that we have at least 7, maybe 8 lore on Frank's side of things, and it's been wrong for about 5 minutes now.
There's a decent Rapunzel. It's going to make it a little harder for Frank to answer the Stitch, but I think Frank might be far enough ahead at this point that he's less concerned with that. LeFou hits the Inkwell.
Okay, as these players are jockeying for position, we will get graphics updated here in just a second. It looks like we do have that. Thank you so much, Mr. Director Sir. All right, now we're going to go back Frank's way. Let's see if he can figure out a way to close it out. Neither player is that close to 20 lore, but we have large boards for both players. A lot of potential combat to be had, and a lot of potential sweeping to be had with Grab Your Sword and Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. Let's see how Frank wants to navigate this turn.
I wouldn't be super surprised to see these Captain Hooks trade off for something, right? They can double trade into the Stitch, or even just sending them into the Simbas is a better use against a Tinkerbell. But this is a great find right off the bat for Frank. It's Grab Your Sword.
Yeah, and that's going to deal 2 to a bunch of stuff, killing 3 characters and leaving damage on the Rockstar. And unless Kurt has the same thing next turn plus something else, Frank is going to be in a commanding position here. Already has board dominance, lore dominance, hand dominance, and we'll see if he can essentially completely lock Kurt out of the game with a couple more characters that are invulnerable to those big damage effects. All right, we're going to quest for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, we just played that one. Excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 14.
Pretty good. And it's going to take multiple cards to take down this Rapunzel. Far too many to take down the Carefree Surfer. Frank is threatening a win very shortly here, especially with yet another threat.
All right, just going to play a Rockstar using all the extra ink that we have available. Now back Kurt's way. Needs to start off with Aerial Singer. Needs Grab Your Sword. Pronto. Doesn't find it. Let's be our guest. We can ink that. If we play another Aerial, we can sing. Oh, we can't sing because our Stitch is dead. I think the game's over.
I agree. Frank was able to even get one of his hooks off the table. There we go.
All right. Well, game number 2 goes to Frank Carson, a dominating board from the get-go, and Kurt unable to keep up. The game 1 and 2 both decided by the player who first casts a whole new world, and in both situations, it was a
Right.
singing it plus a bunch of characters to essentially solidify my board advantage, and then riding that to victory over the rest of the game, even if the opposing character is able to deploy stuff, unable to deploy stuff that keeps up because you're just on the back foot after the draw 7. It's just how it goes.
Yeah, Kurt had some outs there in the middle after that whole new worlds plus Rockstar turn from Frank, but was only able to find one giant fairy and was never able to find a grab your sword. So Frank was able to leverage that one super explosive turn and close out the game just a couple turns later.
All right, players are shuffling up here for game number 2. Just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's in Twitch chat and YouTube chat, enjoying our primary, or not our first Lorcana event, but our main Lorcana event. This is the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational, brought to you by TCGplayer.com. We are in round number 2. The players we're watching on your left: Frank Carson, Magic the Gathering Hall of Famer. On your right, Kurt Spies, no slouch either. Played on the SCG Tour for quite a long time during the 20 teens and is doing well as our last chance qualifier champion last night, and is looking to make a name for himself perhaps in Disney's Lorcana. We recently started the Lost Boys channel, the Lost Boys LOR on everywhere, YouTube, Patreon, Twitter. That's Bomac Courier, myself, Harlan Fear, and a couple other folks from Roanoke, Virginia, all looking to make some awesome Lorcana content for you, and we are putting on this event for you as well in conjunction with Apex Gaming out of Caldwell, Ohio. And we thank you so much for tuning in, and we appreciate you being here. We are about to start game number 3. Kurt Spies will be on the play since he lost game number 2. These are untimed rounds. Players here will have no draws. We're in pod play for day number 1. We're racing to 3 wins. If you get 3 wins, you're into day number 2. If you get 3 losses, you're out. If you get 3 losses before there are 3 wins. The first pod is just 8-person. You try to 3-0. We have 2 pods, and both these players are 1-0, looking to make it to the finals of that first pod and lock up their seat to day number 2. As these players are taking a mulligan here, Matt, why don't you give me some of your expert analysis? What are they looking for to start with? What kind of cards are they going to be throwing back and mulliganing?
Well, in general for Frank, he mentioned that Lilo Simba start hasn't seen that either of these games. I wouldn't be just surprised if he has decided that this is not really the matchup for that, right?
Right.
That this is more about jockeying for position, getting some great value, whole new worlds. Just maybe even if you have Lilo plus Simba, at some point that Lilo's gonna get taken down for free. So Frank's not gonna be able to rely on an aggressive start, and instead wants to set himself up with a good early curve of value. We've seen a lot of turn 1 Captain Hook forceful duelists. I wouldn't be surprised if both of these players are valuing that start very highly.
Yeah, it's a great check for turn 2 Simba Bodyguard. It challenges many of the 1-strength characters from the other side without dying. Doesn't quest very well, but I think in this matchup, questing is kind of in the back of your mind.
Absolutely.
More so, you just want to make sure you have perfect board position. Make sure that you are sequencing well and setting up for future turns. Game 3 underway. Kurt leads off with a Stitch New Dog to set up a potential shifted Rockstar later. Maybe going to quest some, but maybe just leaves it sitting there,
Yeah, now I did catch right off the top there for Frank. We did see Lilo making a wish, that he instantly tucked behind the Stitch New Dog. So now he has the choice whether to contest the Stitch or maybe threaten an aggressive start.
All right, we're going to ink the new dog and play the hook so that we can challenge a potential Simba. But if Stitch wants to quest, we can trade with that as well if there's no defender in the way. All right, here's just a cast Be Our Guest from Kurt. Not where you want to be on turn number 2 usually, but these games seem like they go longer, and cards like Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, Stitch Rockstar are pretty important. We're going to go for the Tiny Tactician, though, so we have a nice little curve on turn 3. And my guess is no quest because the body on Stitch New Dog means shift Rockstar later on, and Kurt agrees.
And I really think it says something that even on turn one, Frank decided not to even play the Lilo. That's, you know, if you're ever going to play it, it seems like it would be on turn one, but uh, Frank just decides fighting for board position is going to be way more important. Maybe the Lilo's going to get to sneak in there and get 2 lore later in the game and, dodge a Tinkerbell for one turn. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see Frank maybe. Here we go.
Okay, so we go turn 2 Lantern and use the Lantern to play that Lilo Making a Wish, which you said. We're going to go back Kurt's way. Lantern on the play, quite strong and oftentimes hard to beat. Lantern on the draw, still very good, although it basically just puts you at parity with your opponent in terms of resource development. Here is a 3-cost play. That's a Tinkerbell we found last turn, and no quest once again back Frank Carson's way.
There's the second Lilo. Now, if I'm in Frank's position, I consider kind of making a gamble. If we get to quest multiple times with a couple Lilos before Kurt is able to find a sweeper, that could put us in a position to kind of turn the tide and threaten a win through lore rather than board position. But Frank instead decides, I'm not going to throw both of these Lilos into the same meat grinder. Save one for after the other dies.
Yep. At this point, if you're trying to make analogies to Magic the Gathering here, the Lilo kind of represents Lava Spike. It's basically doesn't challenge in combat at all, and it just represents a bit of lore generation. And in this matchup specifically, it's very hard to protect, and it doesn't challenge. And overall, it's just not ideal in your opener. But as we know, Kurt Spies has cut them from his deck entirely, even though it's one of the stronger cards against an perhaps underprepared Ruby Amethyst pilot without a lot of cheap interaction.
Exactly. And speaking of the Ruby Amethyst matchup, we did see Kurt was able to take down Ruby Amethyst last night in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's pretty confident in that matchup. I wonder if we'll get to see him play against maybe Nathan or Matt Campo.
All right, Tiny Tactician goes a Luton. Frank going to be discarding here. Still has the ability to play ink number 4, and that way the Lantern allows for 5-drop like Maximus, perhaps even Stitch New Dog plus a Shift. See how Frank wants to sequence. We're going to discard the backup Lilo, it looks like, because of how weak the body is and how inconsequential questing is early on in this matchup specifically. And we're going to play Ariel, looking for Grab Your Sword or something similar, but has a whole new world in hand that we can use to sing next turn if we're able to get on empty. And he finds another whole new world, but may choose not to show it so that Kurt doesn't know about it and perhaps doesn't play around it. Maybe holds more cards in hand. We all know the second whole new world is relatively dead because the first one makes you discard the second one.
Yeah, and Frank does have the opportunity, maybe next turn, to be able to loot the second whole new world away with a Tinkerbell, but instead decides the cards in hand before the whole new world might not matter that much. The plan is to get down to empty right away and then cast it.
All right, Kurt here. Resource disadvantage. Lantern on Frank's side of things. 2 Tiny Tacticians are not able to rumble too well and aren't that threatening, but here Kurt gonna ink smash and might play Simba, but might just smash the Ariel to prevent a big song turn next turn. No, we're gonna shift onto the Stitch Rockstar. Are we going to loot with the Tinkerbells looking for a 1-drop to play or perhaps a song to play like a Grab Your Sword?
If we are looting, I think Kurt rushed here a little. You usually want to draw your cards before making any other decisions, and Kurt kind of in an awkward position now, but maybe is prioritizing trading off for this Tinkerbell instead.
Yeah, I don't hate it, but it does open you up pretty hardcore to an opponent's Grab Your Sword, but I think Grab Your Sword is just key in this matchup no matter what and no matter when. And if your opponent plays it and kills 2 things that are already damaged, not so big of a deal. And plus, we know Frank doesn't have it. So he has a whole new world, which he can play this turn off the Ariel Spectacular Singer after playing some of these characters out of hand. Let's see if that's the play he wants to make.
And I'm sure Kurt considered smashing this Ariel instead of shifting the Stitch Rockstar, but since he didn't do that, it appears he's really trying to get that Stitch out of his hand. boom.
Yeah, and I think getting the Rockstar into play before your opponent plays a whole new world is important, and it's one way for him to potentially keep up. We'll see if Carson has a way to clear the Rockstar. Maybe he draws a smash plus, I don't know. It's very difficult to get it off the table in this matchup when it's not exerted.
Yeah. Tinkerbell Giant Fairy on top, not quite enough to clear the other tanks. And now this aerial for Frank is exposed, of course. A Tinkerbell Giant Fairy from Kurt's side would be pretty threatening, especially as a shift. Looking like at least one copy of A Whole New World in Kurt's hand. Going to be pretty difficult to develop that. And here's a threat from Frank with this Tinkerbell Giant Fairy and a couple trades. So Frank, I like this play from Frank, getting rid of both of the one drops before Grab Your Sword or Giant Tinkerbell can come down, and in exchange you get to ward off any Giant Tinkerbells from Kurt.
All right, looks like we have some updates from our backup matches here. We have the Hug Brothers were battling off camera in the 0-1 bracket. Taryn beat Kyle, the superior Huck brother.
Yeah,
Comes
he's
out
gonna
on top.
hold that one over Kyle for a
Yeah.
while, probably.
Brendan DeCandio defeated Trana's Bad. That means Trana's Bad moves to 0-2, and we'll have an elimination match next round. Brendan now 1-1. Campo won his match over Zach Powers in the mirror match. That finished quickly, actually. Ruby
Wow,
and the
yeah.
mirror, we also have the results. Nathan Stoyer beat Nick Rouse, excuse me. And Mason Clark beat Young Dingo. And then Krista O beat Dawn Delosier. So those are our updates for our other matches.
All right, getting back into this match, the best Kurt could do after that Whole New World was deploy a second Stitch Rockstar and pass.
Not great.
Not ideal.
Well, it looks like both players are kind of in a weird spot, though. Neither player feels comfortable questing. That's one thing that's a little awkward about the combat system. You can only challenge stuff when you're exerted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that creates these weird incentives to not quest and to not activate abilities and to basically leave your characters ready at all times. And that elongates games, creates positions where players just kind of look at each other. And so your goal at that point is to present a threat and use it that is so scary that your opponent is essentially forced to interact with you.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're at in this game.
Rockstar of his own for Frank, combining that with the third Lilo to draw a card, and now is looking at one copy of Grab Your Sword and hoping to hold off, especially into these Rockstars. You can be pretty happy to find yourself with a Grab Your Sword in hand, but I don't know if Kurt has any characters to play to draw cards off these Rockstars. So it's just going to be a Stitch Carefree Surfer, draw a couple cards, and pass back, not doing anything with these Rockstars. It's Kurt.
Okay. No sing, no draw. Carson, what you got? We're in a bit of a holding pattern here.
Yeah.
All right, but now the Rockstar is going to create some spots for Kurt to potentially trade, and that's going to essentially open up the game where both players have to start interacting now. Prince Eric comes down, going to draw a card, and I assume that Frank's going to continuously play a couple more characters that do the same, if he has them. He might not have them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see either of these Tinkerbells come down for Frank. That's, he's inducing action from Kurt, like you said, with these exerted characters, but Tinkerbell Giant Fairy is great at capitalizing on that, and especially if he can get down or threaten to get down a second copy, that'll make any action from Kurt pretty punishable. Yep.
All right, here's Giant Fairy. He's going to deal 1 to opposing characters. And that, with the 2 challenges, is just such a powerful threat next turn. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if Kurt just, not quest, not challenge, because these Giant Fairies are just so terrifying.
Yeah, so with that being said, Kurt's going to kind of needs to answer these cheap characters in a different way if he doesn't want to expose himself to Tinkerbell. So we might actually get to see Lilo put in some work in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. All right, we can sing "Be Our Guest" if we want to with Ariel, and I think that's what Frank is considering. The Ariel does have a lot of value though, and singing just to "Be Our Guest" instead of "Grab Your Sword" or "Potential Whole New World" on the following turn, perhaps puts him in a spot where he's not very happy. Now, Kurt has a pretty gummed up hand even after a draw 7 and a bunch of Carefree Surfer draws, as well as those Stitch Rockstars being active for so long. But his hand looks like a bunch of lanterns and whole new worlds and
Yeah,
Rapunzel's. It's like, okay,
Rapunzel pretty good here at least now that 2 damage has accumulated on this first rock star.
this could be a monumental turn for Spies. He has so many songs and ways to sing them. A Grab Your
That's
Sword
true.
and a Whole New World, both at his fingertips. Well, literally, I guess.
And grab your sword. Well, it only takes down one character by itself. The damage accumulating will make it harder for Frank to get consistent value out of these giant fairies. You know, any challenges they do will leave them banished.
Matt, are you familiar with the chess turn of simplification or simplifying the board?
No.
So, oftentimes in chess, players will trade pieces because it makes decisions easier.
Mm,
And if you are ahead, you would like to complexify to increase
complicate.
complicate to increase the complexity of the board.
Yeah.
But if you're behind, you want to simplify, right?
Okay.
And so at this point, Frank here, since he's in the driver's seat, he just wants to essentially wait for Kurt to do anything while continuously presenting more and more pressure. Whereas Kurt is essentially forced to try to find a way to simplify things because the longer the game goes, Frank can just amplify his advantage. Kurt here gonna go for a grab your sword singing, deals 2 to everything, casts a whole new world off another song, finds another grab your sword. This could be the turn he needed. That setup now with the Tinkerbell gonna pay off in spades. Here's one more damage everything. Bring out the dice.
Nope.
Grab your sword. Everything's dead.
Put
Get
the
them
dice
out.
Put
Get
the
the
dice away.
brooms. It's a clean sweep. Curse Beast takes them all down.
Yeah, you were exactly right when you pointed out how much singing Kurt was going to be able to do. That was, what, 15, 21, 22, 23 ink worth of cards Kurt was able to play. And it led to a massive swing. 5 damage to everything when all is said and done.
You have I'm a big Frank Carson fan.
Yeah,
That was hard to watch.
Yeah.
I was watching a car crash in slow
For sure.
motion. Well done to Kurt for setting that up over multiple turns. Obviously found the second copy of Grab Your Sword off of the whole new world, but setting up a big board of things that can sing and finds a spot on a stalemated board for Frank. And now he's in the driver's seat, and it's up to Frank to essentially do the same thing back to Kurt that Kurt just did. But starting from an empty board is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and like we've mentioned, this matchup not really about questing. Scoreboard still looks at 2-0, but it's gonna take Kurt just a couple turns to quest for victory once he's gotten into such a commanding position.
Right. He has 12 lore on the table, and so if Frank doesn't present anything that's like that challenging or that able to challenge, then we can just quest for 12, play some more stuff, and then next turn quest for 8 and win the game. All right, 1 to everything.
Okay,
Yep.
get out the dice.
Get out the dice. That's not as fun as when you're sweeping everything. Get out the dice. God, we needed some like hardcore rock music to come on when we did that. That was sick. That's got to be the play of the day so far. That turn from Kurt.
For sure.
We'll see if anyone can top it. We'll see if Frank can come back. We have an Aladdin, Swordsman, and Stitch New Dog to go along with the Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. I'm going to go back Kurt's way and see if we can potentially close this game out before Kurt's able to get back in it. The Tinkerbell Giant Fairy can be a little scary, especially in conjunction with a Grab Your Sword. I mean, we saw the damage that Kurt was able to do last turn with that exact combination of things.
Yeah, especially with this Rapunzel, I think Kurt is probably just still going to be safe enough to quest with these characters. You know, Tinkerbell's gonna put in work, but I don't know that it'll be enough work.
Right. And it looks like Kurt actually has another grab your sword too, so it can clean up the new dog and the Aladdin on the other side of the table, in conjunction with some of these other plays from hand, more characters to quest.
Yeah, and a priority I think for Kurt here is gonna be willpower.
Right.
We see that Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts at the front. Any characters he can play that are less vulnerable to the best possible plays from Frank are gonna put him in the best position.
All right, we're gonna do some questing here. More than likely, if you're Kurt, think the worst case scenario ain't that bad.
Exactly.
Perhaps gonna use Carefree Surfer to sing since it quests for the lowest lore here among the stitches. Or the big stitches, I guess. There's so many stitches.
Yeah. Let's see. One, two, three, four, five, 6 stitches in play. And a seventh tucked under that rock star.
Yeah. It's
You
cool
know,
that I love Stitch as a character. He's very cool, and the fact that they made the goon for Amber be the Stitch and the shift of the Rockstar onto it means that it's by far the most powerful goon of the bunch too. So Stitch kind of shown off at all metrics: the 1 drop, the 6 drop, and the 7.
yeah. Just you wait until we get 10 ink Sergeant Tibbs.
All right, we're gonna go question. Are we going to do anything else? Sing this, grab your sword, perhaps. Play Captain Hook, thinking happy thoughts, maybe.
I like it.
Okay, doesn't sing grab your sword. Gonna allow those other characters on the other side to come on in, trade. I'm curious why he didn't do anything with that other Stitch Rockstar. Perhaps,
Or the Tinkerbell.
right. Perhaps just valuing them as, you know, creating like a tower defense board, right? Like you're
Mm,
putting these characters on the table, your opponent can't remove them, and if they ever challenge you, they lose, right?
right.
And so these are just preventative measures, punishments, for playing the game. And if you quest with them, oftentimes you can just leave them potentially vulnerable to being challenged or uh, whatnot.
Yeah, so Kurt playing a turn or two in advance here decides with that Tinkerbell, I can't quite handle it on this turn, meaning it's going to be able to get some value and maybe delay my win by a couple turns. So I'm going to set up my own board to be able to respond to that. So definitely keeping back the Giant Fairy makes a lot of sense, and then is still interested in holding back the Rock Star as well. And Captain Hook thinking happy thoughts here. Not only is it going to be hard for Frank to remove, the Challenger ability means it's going to be pretty good at responding to anything that Frank leaves vulnerable.
All right, so Frank plays Carefree Surfer, gonna draw 2, and now we're gonna move into the stage of the turn where we start challenging and clearing the board as best as we can. We're gonna go 2 into the Carefree Surfer, and then Tinkerbell's gonna go into Carefree
Mm-hmm.
Surfer. That's gonna deal. Excuse me. So gonna go into the Stitch Rockstar, deal 2 to the Carefree Surfer, and then the Aladdin's gonna finish that off. I think that Kurt would have been in a much better position here if he had just sang grab your sword last turn with the Rockstar or the
Right.
Tink and then quested with the other one. And now though, Carson able to clear a couple of those characters, including the Carefree Surfer, and we'll see if Kurt's able to solidify his board position, but you have to start trying to push towards the end of the game.
Absolutely. You've gone through a bunch of your most effective cards now. This is going to be a pretty good grab your sword when it comes down. Should be free to draw a couple cards first, I suppose. Yeah, 2 grab your sword that Kurt has access to.
All right, we're in round number 2 of the Lost Boys Invitational, brought to you by TCGplayer.com. We are in game number 3 of our second round of pod play. Both these players are 1-0, and we're in game number 3. Both these players are playing Amber, Steel, Stitch, Blitz, and we are in a tight one. Kurt had an unbelievable turn 2 turns ago, and now Gonna continue his dominance, playing another grab your sword, playing full retail here. Comes a lantern.
I think we just have to sing this. Do you think we play the second grab your sword here? You're losing a quest to do it, but I think getting that aerial off the battlefield is going to deny Frank some singing. But Kurt just decides to quest for the max.
Yeah, quest max is fine. I think this is a spot where he's deciding, hey, I'm very close to winning. Let's just go ahead and put the pedal to the metal. But I think that because of the thing you just mentioned, Carson's going to be able to sweep the board here and maybe come out on top at the end of everything.
Yeah, the enormous turn Kurt set up was thanks to having those characters in play to sing with. And right off the bat, Frank sings grab your sword with that aerial that Kurt decided to leave alone.
Okay, that's step one. Step two is either sing or cast another grab your sword. I don't
He
think
doesn't
he's
actually
got
have access. That uninkable card is a Lilo making a wish.
All right. Well, I think we can maybe get to a spot where we can not die this turn, but maybe not. We have to get rid of at least two characters, and even getting rid of two characters not enough. All right. Bad way for Frank. Let's see if he's got anything from hand. Gonna need something with rush, which I don't think he plays much of. Another grab your sword, which I don't think he has. A couple smashes, which I don't know if he has one.
Yep.
17
Counting it
more.
out. And kind of walking off the edge here.
Yeah. Well, actually he has a whole new world, so we could do a desperation whole new world, and then that could potentially find us a combination of things that could perhaps help.
Yeah, the problem is you need, I think, both second grab your sword and a Tinkerbell. The Rapunzel, the Rockstar, and the Captain Hook would all survive through just a grab your sword. So Frank's not really gonna have enough ink, but interesting route.
Gonna cast Rockstar. Gonna play Lilo and draw. Finds a Prince Eric. Gonna play Hook and draw. Be our guests.
That ain't it.
No. It looks like Kurt Spies is gonna be moving to 2-0 in our first pot of the day. Draw a card. That's not it. Now, unless lore totals are wrong,
there it is.
We're over, and Frank extends the hand. Kurt Spies moves it 2-0 with his unique and awesome take on Amber Steel Stitch Blitz. Let's go and head on back to the booth. We're going to go over what our top 4 players left so far that are currently undefeated. Since we're 2 pods of 8, we're 2 rounds in, which means we have currently 4 undefeated players. That's going to mark Kurt as our 4th undefeated. And so for our winners matches, we're going to see who makes it into the top 8. We're going to go for the winners first next round, and we're going to be watching Matt Campo, one of our invitational qualifiers from last night, against Krista O. She defeated Dawn Delosier. And we're going to be watching world champion of Magic the Gathering Nathan Stoyer versus Kurt Spies, who we just watched. And those are going to be the matches we're going to be watching in round number 3. It's going to do it for round number 2 of the Lost Boys Invitational. For Bo, Madam, Tandy, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to bring you the first people to make it into day 2 of the Invitational. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to live coverage. We're frozen. All right. Not really sure what to do. We're gonna go offline here for just a sec, chat. We'll be right back. Apologies. Camera froze. You gotta like turn it off, turn it back on. We're also still, I think, being heard.